This meeting of the Livingston City Commission comes to order. Roll call, please.
Chair Schwartz,
Present.
Vice Chair Newts,
Here.
Commissioner Kale,
Here.
Commissioner Lyons,
Here.
Commissioner Willich.
Here.
Another point.
Thank you. First order of business is public comments. Any public comment that is not on the agenda or consent items. And be reminded, public comment should be limited to items over which the city commission has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power. State your name and address when you come to the podium. Hi, Leslie.
Good evening, Commission. So quick note, two things I want to talk about. First of all, there's a job fair. Please help spread the word. We have 27 businesses signed up so far this Saturday at the fairgrounds, 10 to 2. Is our annual spring job fair. Tonight, I am in front of you after being on the so it's a focus group for the Parks Master Plan and concerns about conversations that have taken place over the last couple of years. One in 2021, the Parks and Trails Committee. There was a message that, or a meeting that was forwarded to the commission after the board talked about putting the flagpole back in place at the Triangle. And that came before the commission, and that was in 2022. And so as a reminder, and under the this particular the growth policy under section goal 9.2, there is a actively promote and develop as well as maintain current parks, trails, and outdoor recreational areas that promote Livingston's historic, natural, and cultural attributes as outlined in the City Parks and Trails Master Plan, as another reminder. And being on this focus group, I'm just reminding you of those two items right there before I go to my third. There's been a discussion about under the Parks and Trails Plan Committee, which is under the city now, to do some sort of a reconfiguration of the downtown Sacagawea area. That goes to number 3 here. Number 3, you're going to hear from me as well as many of the people in the room behind me tonight, just in case you're wondering why they're all here. On April 20th of 2023, the National Registry of Historic Places declared Sacagawea Miles Parks Historic District, a historic district here as registered by the state of Montana and National Registry. And in this particular document, there's quite a few really cool things. First of all, one of the main reasons why this was done, in the state of Montana, there were over 85,000 veterans as of 2023 in the state of Montana. And between 3 different wars, from World War II to Korean War to the Vietnam War, there were well over 2,500 people that were killed, casualties just during those 3 wars. As we move forward to today, there are 2 monuments in the state, in the park at Sacagawea, that represent these people for their efforts that they put in, what they do for their life and for the lives that they gave up. And these memorials are protected in this historic district. And in this actual really cool book here that I have, pretty thick, in 1935, the reason why I'm in front of you today, the city of Livingston worked with the Livingston Area Chamber of Commerce to create the workforce under the WPA to be able to create that park and what we have today. And I'm really proud to be a part of the Chamber of Commerce that did such an incredible job down there. And to also note that in here under section 12 is about the memorial itself, the resources, and they are 2 memorials stand at Sacagawea Miles Park Historic District. One is in the northern part of the district, the second in the southern portion. The Northern Military Memorial is located immediately south of the Yellowstone River Bridge at the intersection of South Yellowstone Street and McGee Drive. The North Memorial consists of a hexagonal base constructed on surmounted by a
Time.
flagpole.
Time's up, Leslie. Can you wrap it up real quick?
Yes.
Thank you.
Erected in 2010 by the American Legion in Livingston. The memorial is non-contributing due to its age, but it's an important element to the citizens of Livingston and for what it stands for. And then the second one goes on to talk about, which I can also give you a copy of this. It's also listed on the city's website of what the second one is, the military memorial at the Triangle, which is in question. And you will hear tonight and also coming up in the Parks Master Plan that we are waiting for. The funds have already been discussed about raising to be able to
Thank you,
create it
Leslie.
and
That's
make it
enough.
prettier and nicer and safer, which is what everybody's looking for.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I'll remind everybody you have 4 minutes. I didn't let Leslie know, so. Thank you, Leslie.
Christina Nelson, Falls Creek Road. I'd like to address the Veterans Memorial at Sacagawea Park. It's been brought to the community's attention that the Veterans Memorial is being removed. This has been a landmark for many years as a memorial to the veterans who have served and are serving for as long as I can remember. By allowing those that have been working on the park plan and allowing this removal shows nothing but disrespect for the fact that all of us should not have to be here right now, protecting things that is as honorable as this to our community and our country. I once thought that this would be something that we would never have to see happen in our lifetime. And yet here we are. It makes me sick. I also don't like seeing the same thing happening again and again, especially seeing one that affects our veterans by the memorial being removed and to benefit other interest groups. I ask you to think about what this says to our veterans. I ask you to think of the repercussions of removing this memorial, as this could cause undue stress and harm to our veterans and their families. I ask you to take into account the questions that might come to the mind of a veteran or a family member of a veteran to see the removal of something that was put in place to show respect and appreciation to those that gave their lives. If you move forward with the plan, I feel it will be showing disrespect to all veterans and their families. The symbolization of this memorial is so much more than the material being thrown away that will be lost forever. I believe that we can't have enough flags, so I ask that the flag be put back as well. With the flag flapping in the wind, it symbolizes all the sacrifices our veterans gave and continue giving to our country. In closing, I feel that the ones working on the park plan should be making this bigger and better versus trying to destroy it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Christine. No. Save everybody their breath. I don't know how this rumor got started that we're removing anything in the Triangle. Anybody aware of that? I know there's working on Parks Master Plan. I don't know what's in it yet or anything like that, but I don't know how the rumor got started, but I've had a few phone calls about it, and I don't know where you come from. Perhaps Mr. Gager?
Sir, I'd be happy to address it to the extent I can. I also don't know where the rumor of the impending removal of the triangle at the foot of Yellowstone and intersection of River has come from. I've gotten emails and questions over the last week and tried to address those as they've come in to me. As you stated, there is no active plan to remove the memorial that exists in the triangle. As has been mentioned, there is an ongoing Parks Master Plan that was in a public comment period through the summer and into the fall. We are currently, well, up until an hour or so ago, we were awaiting some information from the consultant team as far as a list of possible improvements to the park system citywide. We did receive some draft comments earlier this afternoon from that team that we were going to review internally. At that point, those will go back to a public process as we move forward to come to a final draft of the Parks Master Plan. So I guess a long way to say, as you folks know, the project is far from complete and public input also is far from complete. So I do regret any confusion that may exist in the community. I think I've addressed it with a few people in the room here over the last few weeks, but happy to address it again if there's any questions of the commission.
Chair Schwartz, if I may.
Yes.
And let's just also, Mr. Gager, you addressed the triangle in the road. But what about I heard other folks mention the other memorial, which is the hexagonal shaped memorial. We have not had any discussions about removing that either.
That is absolutely correct. Quite honestly, we have not done many improvements in the park over any park in the city over the last year or so, year and a half, recognizing that we have this process that we are going through. And so, yes, as an excellent point, there is, as was pointed out, an armed services memorial about 100 or so yards north of the flagpole that was removed. There is a flagpole there, as well as a plaque for each of the branches of the armed service, excluding the Space Force, because that was developed after this memorial was developed. So, it is a nice, quiet, contemplative, I think, respectful space to the veterans, given that it has benches, shade, the flag, view of the lagoon, view of the mountains. But I understand that people have celebrated and honored our veterans in different places over the years. And, quite honestly, I look forward to the Parks Master Plan process continuing so we can, maybe one day, who knows, unify the veterans memorials or come up with something that the community feels is worthy and dignified for the service and sacrifice of those who built this country.
Thank you, Mr. Gager. Any other commissioner comments? Yeah, I'd be a fool to also spring this on the community. It's not the way this commission works. There's a lot of process that
I
goes
can
in.
answer this.
Sorry, Leslie.
Up on your screen there, Melody Mount. She has public comment. She had a meeting on this.
Okay, well, she can comment at her time,
Okay, so
please.
point of order then, right? Back to community comment.
So, I mean, you're more than welcome to give public comment on something that we're not even contemplating. So feel free if you give public comment.
Good evening. My name is Eric Bradley. I'm currently the commander of the Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 2154 here in Livingston. I'm also a member of the American Legion. Our adjutant Melody Mount met with you, Mr. Gager, and evidently there was a discussion that led her to believe that the Triangle Memorial, specifically dedicated to Desert Shield, Desert Storm veterans in something like 1991, was slated for removal. And that's the source of the rumor, just for everyone's verification.
Thank you.
I'm happy to address that. That
Mr.
was
Gager, if you
not
want.
consistent with the conversation that was had. I do recall the conversation with Ms. Mount. We've had several in my time here, and as I explained to her, there's a Parks Master Plan process that was about to move forward during, shortly after our first conversation. And so I do sincerely regret any confusion or any misinterpretation of the comments. I've been pretty clear with a few people in this room over the past few weeks of the path forward. So I do regret really that you all were burdened to come in here on a Tuesday night to comment on something that we're not even contemplating, as the chair
Yeah,
said.
especially with the weather so nice. I mean, believe me, the public will have plenty of opportunity to weigh in on Parks Master Plan, or if any changes such as that would occur or would be contemplated, so. I'm sorry, but yeah, sometimes things happen that miscommunication, so I apologize.
Public comment. Patricia Grable, 204 East Calendar Street. Wonderful thing about public comment is that it means the public can comment tonight. And that a lot of people have taken time out to come, so it.
Nobody's shutting them down. I'm just-
Yeah, I
nobody's
didn't,
shutting down.
I didn't think you would.
No,
So I want to appreciate the people in the audience having the opportunity to take just a few minutes and say what they want. So I am an advocate of the triangle, and I am an advocate of the flagpole going back up. And I spent 5 years with Warren McGee, who was pretty much the creator of Sacagawea Park, and he was so proud of that. So I appreciate the fact that the other people in the room will have the opportunity to weigh in, say give their name, give their address, and weigh in on this issue.
Thanks,
Thank
Patricia.
you.
Well, I'm Cheryl Kautzman. I'm the president of the American Legion Auxiliary. And it, I spoke with a lady today, Eileen Barham, who started the memorial down at the park, which she received permission from the city to do so. That was over 38 years ago. The flagpole was there before she started that memorial. And we would really like to see the flagpole returned. The previous one had rusted and it was just not viable anymore. And so there was money allocated through our previous city manager to put that flagpole back up. The only comment about it was how high it was gonna be. So there was a lot of variation, you know. And so, and then unfortunately, he passed away before that could be done. But he did get the flagpoles down at the city and help with getting the POW flag down at the courthouse. My husband was greatly involved with that. And we would just like to see the flagpole put back up and keep our memorial. And we do a service memorial down there every Memorial Day, right in front of that flagpole. And unfortunately, it hasn't been there for a few years but I really hope that you keep it in your hearts to support our veterans. Keep it so that we can put our flags up on the holidays and our crosses. Oh, sorry, getting a little emotional,
Okay, Cheryl, thank you.
but thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name's Peggy O'Neill, 210 Ash Lane. I just, was kind of offshoot of that as far as the flag, wanting to see it go back up as the memorial. And also, maybe this is a rumor, but I was told that all the posts where the flags go up, like on Memorial Day and Labor Day, have been removed. And they won't be going up this year unless they get back in. Is that a rumor or is it wrong?
Rumor to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to dispel that rumor.
Thank you.
The poles are still on the ground.
Okay.
Or the holes for the poles.
Yeah.
My name is Carol Dyer. I'm married to a veteran. We helped put up the flags out at the park. My question has to do with that parks and master plan that's being developed from a consultant, and wondering if there's been any opportunity or outreach to the different stakeholders to work with the consultant, so that A, the rumors don't start, and then B, there's opportunity for input before the plan is finished. Is that possible, or?
Yeah, we'll answer those questions as we
Okay.
near the end. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Linda Moore, 113 South M Street. I have several different types of comments. And I spoke to Grant Gager before the meeting started about getting a microphone up here because it is really hard. Many times, Carrie in particular, when your voice drops, we can't hear it back there. And when people come up here and they're intimidated about speaking like I am right now, they're aiming here and you can't hear it back there. So if you folks could please work on that, that would really, really help. So I'm just putting that pitch in additionally to everybody else. And last meeting, I asked about consideration on the water bill. So I just want to remind you folks about that. And then the other thing that I noticed, it feels to me, after sitting through some meetings, that respect really needs to be brought up on both sides of this podium. I have heard a lot of comments about Chair Quentin Schwartz really blasting Patricia last time. And I want to just make a statement on your behalf, which I didn't feel that you did that at all. You just simply, and I want to, just reiterate that you were just expressing concern that with the way things are these days and people overreacting to stuff and really getting almost militant about things, you just simply said, be careful of the wording. And you expressed what the wording was that was a problem. So I think it's important for the community to not repeat a story unless you really know what the details are, and to respect what these people do, because I have watched them really try extremely hard. And I want to just, give you folks an atta person for that. The respect in the opposite direction that I don't see necessarily happening sometimes is like when Dave and Patsy came up last meeting and talked about how difficult it is for the traffic going back and forth for the 300 new homes that are on the Wineglass, which wasn't there when they first started. When developments are allowed for newcomers that disadvantageously affect current residents for years with no resolution, and more newcomers are paved the way for, there's something wrong with that. I think it's really important that when somebody comes up with those kinds of suggestions, that they are given the opportunity to work together with you folks, because people that have lived here for a long time have lots of great ideas, and the more that gets put in, the better a chance of a solution. And when resentments build, they don't go away. And I think that we can replace resentment with respect, just the way that the people on the trash commission, Shannon Holmes and Van Garrick were talking, and they came up with solutions. And you must have said you were excited 4 or 5 times when they were doing their presentation last week, or last time. If we had that kind of cooperation coming from the public with you folks, if there wasn't a solution that the public was happy with, they would at least know what the problems are, because both sides are working together. So I'd really like to see you open to that more often, that, the people who work in the waste treatment know the problems there, so they came up with a really great solution. The people who have lived in this community for generations have lots of good ideas, and it could really go a long distance for everything working super well. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, it's good
Good
time.
timing. Any other public comment in the room? Before I move online. Good evening.
Good evening, Heather Grimmer, representing HRDC, 121 North Second Street. And I know we have scheduled public comment for our Park County Housing Coalition. But I just wanted to stop by and share, in case you haven't seen, some of our Park County annual reports, and let folks know that our community needs assessment is live right now, open through the end of the month. And the exciting thing about that this round is we're partnering with all the other HRDCs or community action organizations across the state. And so not only will we get our regional data and then our data by county, but we'll be able to compare Park County data to other counties within the state of Montana and get a deeper dive into needs and challenges that are facing those communities. Obviously, we incorporate our needs assessment data with other assessments, the community health assessment that happens locally in the Park County or We Will Park County report. All of that combines into a great report that we hope is a resource and tool for you. So I just wanted to share that as well. And then while I'm here, remind you that we do have a local advisory council as well that represents Park County and is now serving in an advisory capacity to our board of directors. And we also always have one board designated seat for Park County. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room? Otherwise, we're going online. Did you speak already?
No, you
Oh,
didn't.
okay.
I'm Paul Bradley. VFW member, and I served in 5 wars. To ensure that you could do what you're doing and that we could do what we're doing. We don't particularly want our memorial moved. If you decide you're going to move it, come hell or high water, give us a place that stands out as well as the one we currently have. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Online, anybody have public comment online, please come off mute or raise your hand. Seeing anybody.
Melody?
Oh, I'm sorry. Melody Mount.
Hi, so Melody Mount, 10 Cokedale Spur. I wanted to just take a minute and address what has been deemed as maybe a miscommunication from what I heard from a meeting that I had. That I was very specifically advised that the triangle is dangerous and it needs to be fixed. And so they want to possibly maybe move the memorial, and this is in quotes, to the dirt pile behind the Civic Center, maybe the corner of that Miles area, or remove it completely and just use the other military memorial that was placed there. So I'm not sure what I misconstrued out of those very specific comments about what was looking at. I very specifically requested that maybe we could just at least get our flagpole put back at our expense. I was advised that was not going to be able to happen as well. I requested a seat at the table to make sure that we had input with this parks master plan, and we were not given any seat as a stakeholder in any of the meetings. A few of us did attend the public meetings that were held at the Civic Center and at the farmers market, but we really did not have any input, and we certainly didn't get any anything back that gave us any clarity that there was a plan to leave that memorial in place. As a matter of fact, the comment was, "Oh yeah, I heard about that flagpole." So I just wanted to put that out there. If somebody has, else can take something else from what I was very specifically told, then, that's whatever miscommunication, but that was not anything that I just ad-libbed. That was pretty much in quotes on what I was told at the meeting in August of last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody.
Response.
Any other public comment online?
We're not too interested in having our,
You've already spoken, sir. You can't speak again. Yeah, you've had your time. We can't just keep coming up and going back and forth, sorry. But we can meet after the meeting. If you so desire. Anybody else online? General public comment? Seeing anything?
Nope.
Okay, no public comment online,
Asshole would be my public.
chief,
Don't fight.
yeah, well, I have a motion for a 5-minute break,
I'll make a motion for a 5-minute break.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, let's take a break. Go ahead, prevail. Yeah, I'll ask for public comment one more time online. Seeing nobody online, I'll go one more time back into the room. If anybody would like to make public comment, general public comment for things that are not on the agenda tonight.
Board. My name is Richard Dyer. I'm not a resident of the city here, but I do live in the county. I'm a disabled Vietnam combat veteran. The flagpole and the Veterans Memorial there, I think, is very important to our veterans of this community. Not just this community. I know that veterans come from other areas and they do go through the park and they do visualize that. They have an opportunity. Now I know that I understand that they're talking about doing some construction work possibly on the roadway, striping the road. And don't know if that's going to happen, but I hear that. Might eliminate some of the flagpoles. But and I know that the kids out of high school kind of zoom through the park and they don't go for 15 miles an hour. One of the things that my wife and I were talking about earlier was why not a roundabout? A roundabout in that position right there slows everybody down and gets rid of them kids, at least for a moment, zooming through there. It's a great opportunity to write tickets. Revenue to the county, the city. Anyway, and it provides a place for the memorial. And it would be quite large, actually, for that memorial and a flagpole. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, public comments closed. Question, Mr. Gager, perhaps you can answer is, with the master parks plan, what's next? What's where are we at with that? And then community engagement going forward?
Fantastic question, Mr. Chair. So as I mentioned, somewhat coincidentally, later this afternoon, we received a draft of kind of their initial recommendations that were based on public community feedback that was taken, going all the way back to July and August of this past year. And so those preliminary recommendations, like I said, we will review them internally, and then we will put those out to the community. I would say within my newsletter, the city newsletter, for an opportunity for the community to access that document, review it, and then provide comments and feedback. And then as we work through the process, the document ultimately will make its way up to you folks for your review and adoption as well. Several more opportunities for public feedback in the process.
Thank you, Mr. Gager. Anybody want to
Yeah,
add
can I-
on to that?
can I add
Please.
something? That the city, all of us, accept comments from people, whether they're in the city or the county. We don't discriminate based on like where people live. If they're in the county, we've had lots of county folks that give input on the city document, so. So you're also welcome.
Sure. And so to be clear, because I heard this and I want to reassure folks that their comments were heard and or taken in by the consultant. You may have given comments on that plan in July and August, and you would not have seen anything yet. So I know it seems like a very long time, but those comments have been taken in, they're being processed by this consultant. We'll get the draft, and then that draft will come out and we'll have opportunity to make comments on it again. So I did hear someone say, well, I made comments, at the farmer's market last summer and I haven't seen or heard anything yet. That's right. You haven't, but you will. It'll be included in this document that Mr. Gager has mentioned. So long process. Please be patient. I understand, but a lot of these things tend to take time. And unfortunately, we're a government, which makes things go even more slowly. So just to be clear, did I summarize that correctly, Mr. Gager?
Very accurate.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Kale. Okay, moving on to consent items. Any commissioner like to pull any items?
I'd like to pull D.
Okay, Commissioner Lyons wants to pull E, any other? If not, I entertain a motion for the remainder of the consent items.
I'll make a motion to approve consent items A, B, C, E, and F.
Can I have a second?
Second,
Motion by Kale, second by Newts. All in favor?
I
Aye, motion carries. Commissioner Lyons.
Yeah, I just would appreciate a description from Mr. Gager on what this agreement is for item D.
Absolutely, Commissioner. Appreciate the opportunity. The item before the commission this evening is an agreement with the View Vista community regarding a application for a minor subdivision that was put in by the community. And as you folks know, a minor subdivision is for those who are seeking to create, 5 or fewer lots out of a COS lot. And so they are seeking to subdivide their parcel from 1 into 2. One parcel would house the current mobile home community and the other manufactured home community, and the other would house the apartment buildings that are there as well. The water and sewer that serve those, the currently 1 parcel, but future 2 parcels are very interconnected and pull off of the city system or interconnect with the city system, both at View Vista Drive for water and then at Geyser basically for sewer. And so as the city and the community were working through the minor subdivision process, we recognize that we are doing so in the context of a larger water and sewer project that the community and city have been working together on for several years now, and most recently received a community development block grant to help with construction, and we continue to work with the community to fund the remainder of the design and construction of the improvements. And so as we were going through the administrative minor subdivision, we recognized that the other process is ongoing and the timing would not align. And so in order to, I guess, preserve the ability of the city and the community to ensure that they remain fed by the city services off of View Vista and then also feeding into Geyser, this agreement was recommended and contemplated, agreed upon by both parties, which basically just says that once the property is subdivided, if it is sold, the purchaser of the tract needs to work with both the community and the city to effectuate the design and construction of the new water and sewer improvements. And so it really is just to ensure that future coordination as we work through this much larger infrastructure process to serve the community. Very long-winded answer. I apologize.
So what I took from it was that this is an agreement that ensures for adequate provision of utilities if the subdivision, which has not happened yet, were to become in separate ownership. Is that correct?
Very well said. And this agreement is a condition of that subdivision process.
Gotcha. But this is not a subdivision that we're voting on. As it's an agreement to facilitate adequate provision of utilities to that subdivision.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners?
I'll move to approve consent item D.
I'll second.
Motion by Lance, second by Kale. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, on to proclamations. The first proclamation of City of Livingston City Commission declaring April 13th through 19th, 2025 as Animal Control Officer Appreciation Week in Livingston, Montana. Whereas animal control officers serve as first responders for animals in need, rescuing loss, preventing cruelty, ensuring public safety, and educating the community, often in challenging and occasionally dangerous conditions. And whereas the National Animal Care and Control Association, established in 1978 to provide training, resources, and support for animal control professionals, leads this annual observance in honor of the individuals who protect both animals and the people who care about them. And whereas in the City of Livingston, animal care and control are one of several essential duties carried out by a 3-person code enforcement team who work closely with Livingston Park County 911 dispatch and Livingston Police Department, Livingston Fire and Rescue, and our local animal shelter to ensure the well-being of both animals and the community. And whereas these professionals are connected to many departments across the city and perform their work with professionalism, responsiveness, compassion, and teamwork, demonstrating a strong commitment to public service in every interaction. And whereas it is important to recognize and honor the dedication, service, and positive spirit brought to this vital role by the members of our code enforcement team who contribute greatly to the health, safety, and quality of life in Livingston. Now therefore be it resolved on behalf of the Livingston Commission, I, Quentin Schwartz, Chair, do hereby proclaim April 13th through 19th, 2025 to be Animal Control Officer Appreciation Week in Livingston, Montana. And further, I encourage all residents to join in expressing appreciation to our code enforcement team and all those who work to protect animals in and around our community. And a special shout out to our Darcy, who is our animal control officer here in Livingston. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Animal control is indeed one of the most important functions that we offer here in the city of Livingston. And our primary animal control officer could not be here this evening because she is out actually wrangling animals as we speak. And our long timer, Brad, who was born and raised in the community. You all know Brad. He also had a very long day. But I would encourage folks at home, when they do encounter an animal, to please reach out to the animal control officer. The animal control officer's number is 406-548-5743. And she is always eager to reunite a lost dog with its, or cat with its own. And that's a bigger issue here than I've seen in other places, cats on a leash. So I guess as a reminder as well, please do keep your pets on a leash outside to the extent possible. But if you do lose them, the number I just read can help reunite. And I appreciate the time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Gager.
Can you see
Commissioners.
it? Can you see that number one more time? I feel like that maybe needs to
Did
go
I go
on.
too
This is
quick?
really Livingston for all the dog posts. Yeah.
Yeah, it is 406-548-5743.
Can I still?
Sure, please.
I would just say, what an amazing hire to have Darcy move over from finance into animal control. She's amazing. Many of you probably know her from coming to City Hall and paying bills. And I can't imagine somebody from the city that I'd be more excited if my dog were lost to have my dog than Darcy. Like, and also she's just really great. So I would reach out to her if you do see lost pets. There's probably, there's people as friendly as Darcy, but maybe nobody friendlier than Darcy.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, and I would
Mr.
just
Kelly?
say, I know that Darcy wrangles more than just cats and dogs. And so, I appreciate her. I know recently there was assistance with a snake and other types of pets, so it's more than just that, and we appreciate the work that she does, so.
Thank you, Commissioner Kale. Anybody else comment? All right. Moving on to second and final proclamation this evening. Proclamation of the Livingston City Commission declaring April 27th through May 4th, 2025 as light the night for fallen firefighters in Livingston, Montana. Whereas each year firefighters across the United States make the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty, protecting the lives and property of others. And whereas the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation honors those brave individuals during the annual Light the Night for Fallen Firefighters tribute, held in conjunction with the National Fallen Firefighters Memorial Weekend. And whereas landmarks and homes across the country are illuminated in red to recognize and remember our fallen heroes and to support and show support for their surviving families. And whereas the city of Livingston honors the courage and selflessness of all firefighters and stands in solemn remembrance of those who have given their lives in service to their communities. And whereas we especially recognize and thank our own Livingston Fire and Rescue Team for their unwavering dedication, bravery, and commitment to protecting our community each and every day. And whereas this observance is a powerful reminder of the dangers first responders face daily and a time to express our deep gratitude for their service and sacrifice. Now therefore be resolved on behalf of the Livingston City Commission, I, Quentin Schwartz, Chair, do hereby proclaim April 27th through May 4th, 2025 to be Light the Night for Fallen Firefighters in Livingston, Montana. Further, I encourage all residents and businesses to participate in this tribute by lighting their homes and buildings in red to honor and remember those who have fallen. Support their families and show appreciation for the men and women of Livingston Fire and Rescue. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Schwartz. I also thank the men and women of Livingston Fire and Rescue who have a very difficult job that included 2 structure fires in the city last week, and they continue to do good work every day. So, and I suspect that's why they're not here right now, is they're getting some rest. I've just looked over the call log. It was another busy day out there.
Okay, moving on from proclamations, going to scheduled public comment. First public comment is Prospera. Is anybody here with Prospera? Oh, yes, there he is. I'm sorry.
Podium was right in line.
I saw you
Couldn't see.
earlier.
I'm Paul Reichert with Prospera. I have a short presentation. Grant's gonna help kind of navigate. Have a couple handouts to just make one and do the rest. I really appreciate the time being able to share with you and kind of reintroduce some of you to Prospera that may not be familiar with what we do here as we serve Livingston and Park County to help create strong businesses and thriving communities. My name is Paul Reichert. I'm the Executive Director of Prospera. Next slide. We help people in business and we help people in communities find a pathway to success. We act as navigators, problem solvers, and a catalyst for a strong Montana economy. And we do this in 4 primary ways. Prospera provides access to capital. We help businesses and community projects get loan financing or business development grants, help turn an idea into reality. We provide business advising and trainings, helping people build their skills and confidence for every phase of their business. And our business counseling is free and it's confidential. We provide support for community development. We act as kind of a strategic partner for organizations, cities, rural communities to get things done. And we provide peer networking opportunities to bring people together through events or business roundtables to make meaningful connections. Here in Livingston, for the last year, we're providing in-person business support in town 1 day a month. And people make appointments in advance, but we're here, we have a staff person here at least once a month. Next slide. Oh, thank you. We're also celebrating our 40th anniversary, serving Southwest Montana. So just some interesting facts is our communities have grown substantially over the time period. Gallatin and Park counties together
comprise 15% of the entire state's population. So we have a significant region here for both growth and the communities that we serve. Our staff has expanded commensurate with the growth of the region. So we have a wonderful staff team. And again, we're here, our business counselors are here one day a month. Make sure we're meeting people where they are. In the last 10 years, our impact in the region has been substantial. We've counseled more than 11,000 individual business clients. We've helped start several hundred new businesses. We've injected over $100 million of new loans and business development funding into the region, and worked on 37 community projects. So I'd like to just tell you a couple stories about some of the people and community projects we've worked on over the years. Glassy Baby, you may be aware of it here as a new company that's here in Livingston and Park County. We helped with a business development grant as they were building out, and worked with with Park County to make that new investment possible. We worked with a company in Three Forks, Jessica Lemons, who's an optometrist who expanded her business in Three Forks, making a big impact in a rural community. We worked with Riverside Hardware years ago to help Dan get his retail storefront established here in downtown Livingston. We've worked with Quality Foods Distributing, which was a startup, and now is probably one of the biggest distributor of Montana-made products in 3 states. And we've worked with the ladies out at Spurline Feeds, helping them get new equipment to make their operation more efficient. Some of the other businesses we worked with in the area, Black Dog Farms, Burrell Burger and Gardner, Scadam Dairy, just to name a few of the companies that we worked with in Park County. Prospera has also played a major role with the photonics industry that kind of got its start in Bozeman, but is definitely growing and expanding, and is now an internationally recognized business hub in Montana with over 35 companies that employs more than 1,000 people. It's a very significant business sector, and I suspect there's folks in Livingston and Park County that either work for or are part of this business sector. And I thought I'd share just kind of a little bit of a weird or interesting story about the photonics industry. The next slide, the Sphere in Las Vegas is the world's largest spherical structure. It's 35 stories tall. It's 500 feet across. It's really hard to look at that picture and try to think how big it is. They needed a very specialized camera to operate that facility. In fact, they needed the world's highest resolution LED camera ever made. And that camera was designed and built by a company in Bozeman by folks that are born and raised in Bozeman. So that's the next slide. And when I found that out, I was just sort of blown away at the kinds of things that the photonics industry is doing. Companies that are using light, laser, and optics to make products and services. And that story is just kind of just an amazing story. Some of the other stories I want to share are more about community projects. So Prospera has supported community development. Years ago, we worked with Shannon on a planning grant that helped with some of the engineering designs for Calendar and Main Street reconstruction. We worked with the property owners out at Yellowstone, the Yellowstone Grain Elevator is how I thought of it. Some of the early planning that ultimately led to the redevelopment of that site. Prospera was involved years ago with some of the early planning for the Gardner Gateway project before the entrance of Yellowstone was redesigned. So we've had history working with community projects for many years. And we helped HRDC in Bozeman with some of their final financing with the Bozeman Chamber for the emergency shelter that's going up in Bozeman. So Prospera is a business and a community development organization. A little bit about how we're funded. We do have some government grant funding for our business programs, but those are relatively modest contributors. Most of our funding comes from private support, from local businesses, local organizations, or program income from our own services. So Prospera is very diversified, but we are growing the organization because we have a growing area that we're serving. And some of the government support we have doesn't help us do that. some things that I'm looking out ahead as an organization, just some highlights of sort of what's out in the future. Obviously, local business support is really important to us. So we're here in Livingston 1 day a month. We have a business roundtable coming on May 7th that is nearly full, so I'll share a flyer about that. Prospera is also working on some affordable housing. We just started an affordable housing fund with Gallatin County. And so I'm really interested to hear about the Housing Coalition's work here in Park County. Obviously, workforce and AI, I kind of put those two together because workforce is just an ongoing need for local businesses of every size. There isn't a single business we talk to that doesn't have some kind of workforce component or concern. So that's everything from training to how to sort of navigate that going forward. And then community building. As our region grows and expands, every community is sort of challenged by how we build better communities, how we really design a place of lasting value. So those are some things that Prospera will lean on in the future. Couple things happening, just some highlights coming up in the next couple of weeks. The Montana Economic Developers Association is meeting here in Livingston, April 22nd through 24th. I believe that's at the community center, Shane Center over here. So that's about 120 people that'll be in town for a couple days. We have a women's business roundtable May 7th. That's nearly full. And I just really appreciate the time to be able to kind of give you a quick rundown of what Prospera is up to in the community, and happy to have questions if you have any.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Grant, for trying your best to keep up.
Paul and I will stand for any questions you may have.
Commissioners.
Great, thank you.
I will say you did amazing work, Paul. And you have been for many, many years, so.
Appreciate that.
And I appreciate everything you do. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next scheduled public comment, Park County Housing Coalition. I don't think you have to sign in. You're
Okay.
scheduled. Thank you.
Well, great. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you so much for giving me some time to speak with you this evening about what the Park County Housing Coalition has planned for 2025. I really appreciate it. My name is Catherine Daly, and I'm the Park County Housing Coalition Program Manager with HRDC here in Livingston. Pronouns are she, they. Feel free to use them interchangeably. Next slide, please. So before we begin, I'd like to just thank all of our financial supporters, which include the City of Livingston. You all have contributed to our work since I started my job in September of 2023, and I would not be here without your support and the support of our many other wonderful financial partners. Next slide, please. So I'll be covering 3 topics this evening. First, I'm just going to provide some background on the coalition as a reminder. Second, I will revisit what's happening in our housing market, similar to what I shared last year. And then finally, we'll review this year's work plan. Next slide, please. So as you might recall, the coalition is a program stewarded by HRDC's Community Development Department since 2020 and supported by a host of really wonderful local, state, and national partners, some of whom are here tonight. These include, but certainly aren't limited to, our financial supporters. Our mission is simply to increase opportunities for Park County residents to access housing where they can afford to live and thrive. And we are community-led. I am a full-time paid staff who's supported by a 9-person volunteer steering committee comprised of Park County residents. City Manager Gager served on our steering committee, and then due to scheduling conflicts, he had to swap out and swap in Planning Director Severson. So she is currently serving on our steering committee on behalf of the City of Livingston, and we were very grateful for Mr. Gager's service on the steering committee, and we're delighted to have Planning Director Severson in that role now. Our work
as you might recall, is guided by the 2022 Housing Action Plan, or HAP, which was adopted into the City of Livingston's growth policy. We'll be talking more about the Housing Action Plan shortly. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about how we work, which is strategically implementing tools from the Housing Action Plan in a manner that serves people with different housing needs throughout our community and addresses different parts of our housing market. So on this slide, there are two guides that we use to help meet this goal. One, that sort of building shaped icon in the lower left-hand portion of the screen is a framework from an organization called Local Housing Solutions. And the other is the Housing Ladder, which you might have heard of. It describes the spectrum of housing types that people are likely to access in our community. So for example, when somebody is experiencing homelessness, they have fallen off the ladder. The first rung, therefore, is emergency shelter, and from there they climb up into rentals and then homeownership, ideally. Next slide, please. We also work opportunistically. So that means we prioritize Housing Action Plan tools for implementation that leverage national, state, and local law and housing policy changes. A great example of that is last year's work on accessory dwelling units, which you might recall came about because there was a change at the Federal Housing Administration on their lending policy. There was a change at the state level about regulations related to accessory dwelling units. A subcommittee that was working before I got brought on board prioritized accessory dwelling units for implementation. And so we thought the time is right for us to do this. And you can see evidence of that process on the screen. I have images of the FHA's 2023 October policy that created that new financing mechanism for ADUs, and Senate Bill 528, which was signed into law after the last legislative session that cleared regulatory barriers to ADU creation. We also prioritize tools that align with and build upon the ideas, expertise, and values of our partners. So the photos on this slide are of us partnering with LiveWell 49 to provide a free lunch and learn at Livingston Healthcare about how housing impacts health outcomes, and of our volunteer panelists of a free ADU financing seminar that we held last spring. Next slide, please. So, we were doing this last year. What did we accomplish? Our areas of focus were accessory dwelling units, employer-assisted housing partnerships, so workforce housing, and zoning reform, which was of course driven and continues to be driven by the City of Livingston. I won't go into detail about these things now. I would be happy to talk more about any of this work if you have questions after the presentation. I just want to add that all of the resources we created for our programming last year, particularly our ADU programming, is available online for free at parkcountyhousing.com. We have videos, budgeting and forecasting tools, helpful guides from AARP, which was another one of our partners last year, that help you improve the safety and accessibility of your home. A really helpful wildfire safety guide from Headwaters Economics, so please check it out. But you can see on the screen some of our impact. Next slide, please. We really strive for meaningful engagement, and that's engagement that's tailored to the interests, needs, and strengths of our participants and directly related to our implementation of Housing Action Plan tools. Not everybody has to be part of our community's housing solutions, but there's room for anyone who's interested. We will find a way to fit you into this puzzle. This has been an incredibly rewarding part of our work, and I really look forward to connecting with more people as we implement more Housing Action Plan tools. I do want to call out Planning Director Severson, who you can see in that photo on the bottom. She is looking through her notes and is about to present to our ADU workshop participants during a session on permitting and design. So she helped them understand the permitting requirements that the City of Livingston has for ADUs to help them move through that process efficiently while complying with all of the community's regulations. So I just really, really appreciate her input on that. Lastly, I want to highlight here that with additional grants and financial gifts, we are able to close the gap in my position. So I'm just about fully funded through 2026 and can focus entirely on, the actual work of implementing the Housing Action Plan and not fundraising to do the work. Next slide, please. So what's going on in our housing market? Like last year, we're seeing a lack of mobility in which people are either locked out of housing into the community or locked into homes that might not be meeting their needs. Last year, we talked in the context of accessory dwelling units of folks who are getting older. They're finding that their house is too big for themselves. They're finding that, you know, it might not meet their accessibility needs as they age. Same as last year, about 30% of Park County's households rent their homes, 70% own. We're still seeing prices for rental and ownership homes that are out of reach for many residents. As I mentioned last year, affordable, the idea of what's affordable to people can vary. A common rule of thumb that we use is that when a household spends more than 30% of its income on housing, it's not considered affordable. Instead, these households may be cost burdened by their housing. I also just want to add that some of the numbers on the screen mask the fact that many of our community members are making do with a lot less. So roughly a third of Park County households are living on $50,000 or less annually, and more than 1,000 households, almost equally split between renters and homeowners, are estimated to earn less than $19,999 annually. This was some feedback that I got on our presentation last year. I've had some folks reach out to me and say, hey, I'm a homeowner. I don't make $83,000 annually. You know, where am I in this data? You're here, you're living in Park County, and we see you. What's presented on the screen are just the median income representing the midpoint. Half folks are bringing in more than that, and half folks are bringing in less. Next slide, please. So home prices have continued to rise. They've more than doubled since 2020. Adjusted for inflation, they've still grown 88% over 5 years. That's an average of 17% growth each year. Interest rates have decreased, well, last, when I first gave this presentation in March, they had decreased a little bit since last year, but they remain elevated. The estimated median rent is nearly $400 more per month than the maximum the median renting household can afford, using that 30% rule of thumb that I shared at the last slide. There are some glimmers on the horizon. However, I am aware of a variety of housing developments that are making their way through the permitting process or might be submitted here shortly. And these have some potential to bring some sorely needed homes to our market in the next few years. Next slide, please. So how are we going to address this year? Because we focused on tools that targeted homeowners with the financial resources to build a new home, like accessory dwelling units, because we targeted workers through employer-assisted housing partnerships, and arguably could affect outcomes up and down the ladder through zoning reform, we thought we should turn our attention to different rungs on the housing ladder. So this year, we're focusing on Tool 10, Rehabilitation Loans and Grants, and Tool 12, the Coordinated Entry System, and picking up work that was started by a coalition subcommittee back in 2022 and 2023, the development of a community housing fund. Next slide, please. So the Park County Home Repair Program is an emerging program that we are developing using funds from a successful community development block grant application. The funds come from something called the Housing Stabilization Program. So all told, it's the CDBG HSP. It's about as complex to administer as it is to say. So we are currently in the process of working through getting our documents order, basically to administer the program. But generally, the goal is to preserve the homes of low and moderate income Park County homeowners. And we do this through addressing health and safety issues with those homes, improving ADA accessibility, and weatherizing those homes and increasing their energy efficiency. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, all of the funding for this program comes from Community Development Block Grant Housing Stabilization Program. That funding was secured by HRDC's Community Development Director, my boss, Lila Fleischman, a few years ago. And because of the way that that funding is structured, we have to deliver it as a zero interest, fully forgivable loan for home rehab, weatherization, and ADA repairs. Homeowners will need to sign documents with us basically restricting use of the property for the loan term, ensuring that the home's affordability, ensuring the home is affordable for a period that's specified by the state and the federal government as a condition of us getting that money. So those are the documents we're working on putting together right now. Eligibility for this program is also fairly narrow. The home must be occupied by the owner. It must be a single family detached home that is site built. So unfortunately, manufactured housing isn't an eligible use for these funds, although we really are aware that that is a very strong need in our community. The home has to be in Park County, and the household income has to be at or below 80% of area median income. Currently, that's about $61,000 for a household of two. I expect those numbers to increase slightly when HUD updates those numbers, probably later in April or early in May. There are more than 1,600 homeowners in Park County who would be eligible for this program, as far as I am aware. And that leads me into next slide, which is why is this program needed? So more than a quarter of Park County homeowners earn less than $50,000 annually. More than half of our homes were built before 1980. And more than 3/4 of our housing stock is single family detached homes. All of these figures are from our 2021, or the majority of these figures are from our 2021 housing needs assessment. And just to sort of deepen your picture of how old our housing stock is, a full 22% of these homes were built in 1939 or earlier. So nearly a quarter of our housing stock is at least 86 years old. So this is a program that can really help with the preservation of homes in our community. Housing affordability includes the creation of new homes, but is not just limited to that. We have to preserve what we have and make sure it's still affordable for folks who already live in here. Next slide, please. So another tool from the Housing Action Plan is the coordinated entry system. And our work with coordinated entry is designed to strengthen our community's existing method of assessing, prioritizing, and referring people who are experiencing a housing crisis. So they're experiencing homelessness, so they can exit that homelessness as rapidly as possible, with referrals to complementary services that they might need to be able to remain housed. So currently, my colleague, Katie Williams, who is Livingston's case manager at HRDC, leads this system, which is a group of local partners, including folks at Aspen, Community Health Partners, or formerly Community Health Partners, L'Esprit, the Mobile Crisis Response Team, and the Park County Drop-In Center, who will be joining us shortly. And they're a network of folks who can help people experiencing a housing crisis identify resources and get assessed and prioritized rapidly. Basically, this is just a system that helps local service providers collaborate better in that effort to ensure that the highest need, most vulnerable residents are prioritized for housing and services. So what are we doing to help with that? So like with any entity, there's been staff turnover in all of the involved agencies, and sometimes it helps to get back to basics. So clarifying each partner's roles and responsibilities, updating organizing documents that allow partners to share information about their customers, patients, and clients. And then once the system is shored up, explore participation by other critical partners like Livingston Healthcare, which is called out in the Housing Action Plan as a partner that could really benefit the system if they were involved. So they're actually one of our supporters, our new financial supporters, along with the Montana Healthcare Foundation, because they recognize the impact of this work. Next slide, please. So this is just a slide that helps clarify how coordinated entry can work. It can be a little confusing. This image is from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and basically there are 4 components. The first is access. So somebody experiencing a housing crisis needs to access one of the partners that's participating in the coordinated entry system. Then they get assessed by one of those partners. Then those partners all get together in what are called case conferencing meetings to prioritize folks who've been assessed. And then they get referred to housing and complementary services. Next slide, please. So why is this program needed? Well, nationwide homelessness increased by 18% in 2024. In Park County, 43 people were identified as experiencing homelessness during the annual point in time count last year, which is a 290% increase from the 11 identified in 2022. We don't have data from our most recent point in time count yet, but we still expect those numbers to be elevated above 2022 levels, if perhaps they've come down a little bit from last year's levels. Moreover, a 2023 assessment of 18 Park County service providers that I did, including Officer Hard over there, identified strengthening coordinated entry as one way to achieve a broader goal of improving collaboration among our local service providers. I'm sorry, Chief Hart. And furthermore, as I mentioned, the 2022 Housing Action Plan identified participation by Livingston Healthcare as a gap in coordinated entry implementation. So we're working to shore up and strengthen the system so that we can bring more partners to the table and make that more effective. All right, next slide. So the last component of our work this year is a little bit more free-flowing, which is why we have this really fun series of images on the screen. And it's related to the future of the coalition, which I view, in my role as a 3-year experiment. What can we get done before the end of 2026? And will there still be a need for this program or something different at that point? This is, of course, dependent upon having money to pay staff and money to deploy out into the community so they can access and remain in healthy, dignified homes, right? We couldn't run a home repair program if we didn't have $600,000 through this community development block grant housing stabilization program. So I guess I should have put a question mark on that rightmost icon on the screen where it reads continue the work. But ideally this year, we're going to decide on appropriate and viable potential revenue sources for community housing fund to support this work long-term, and then finalize the parameters of this fund. Next slide, please. So we're still early in this process. The steering committee has been learning about examples of each of these types of potential funding mechanisms since last fall. Now we're at the stage of discussing each one and thinking about how viable we think they are and what we think the communities will support. When we looked at these different types of funds, we looked at examples of how they have been deployed throughout the state of Montana, so we can actually see how they work within our context. A few weeks ago, we had our first steering committee meeting where we engaged in the assessment process of identifying some of the most viable among these various types of funding mechanisms. One that rose to the top was philanthropic gifts and grants, but we recognize that there will have to be other sources to make this fund resilient and flexible enough to be of long-term value to the community. As we shorten this list, we will have more and more conversations with folks to hear their thoughts. And of course, if we launch a campaign no one supports, then we just won't raise any money. So we are trying to go slowly and make sure we embark on something people understand and think is valuable. Next slide, please. So once we identify a handful of the most likely funding sources, we will pick up on the work of that 2022-2023 coalition subcommittee that put together the framework of community housing fund that's on the screen. Obviously, things have changed since then, so we'll have to decide whether the allocations that were made at that time are still appropriate. For one, there is now a financing pathway for accessory dwelling units that didn't exist in the spring of 2023. So we'll have to evaluate whether accessory dwelling unit loans would still be a high impact use of money. We have also since learned that funding for folks to repair and replace their manufactured housing is extremely rare and very much in need. A significant portion of our housing is manufactured homes, so this might be something we look at. These are just examples of what this process will look like when we get to it. Again, these are just a few ideas that have surfaced in the last year of work. We haven't looked closely at this and won't until we have a better idea of what our funding might look like, because the type of funding and how often it is renewed will influence how we're able to spend it. So last slide, please. If you want to participate in our work this year, you have a couple of options. Join the coalition and subscribe to our email list on our website. And email me, my email's on the screen, if you want to participate in any of our areas of work. Either by referring someone for the Park County Home Repair Program, if you want to participate in it, or wondering whether your organization could participate in coordinated entry, or would like to help structure and fundraise for the Community Housing Fund, I want to hear from you. All hands on deck. That's all that I have. Thank you so much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Catherine. Mr. Gager,
Catherine, I will stand for any questions the commission may have.
commissioners.
I'm good.
That's a great presentation. Thank you.
It's a great presentation, which means I have questions.
Commissioner Lewis,
That's,
please.
it's a good thing when I have questions. I'm curious, first of all, thank you, Catherine. I do appreciate that you come with information, and I also specifically appreciate that you got questions last year and you remembered and you addressed it today. So thanks. That's always meaningful when people listen to the community, to Linda's point earlier. I'm curious on the slide about housing rehabilitation loans and grants, you have some information about Park County. Do you have that data on just Livingston, like the city of Livingston proper?
I haven't looked at, a lot of my information is from the American Community Survey, 5-year estimates. And already in a, like, Park County size makes that data somewhat unreliable depending upon what metrics you're looking at. And so if I looked just at Livingston, I feel like that the error bars on that data would be pretty significant.
Okay. It's just because it's the number of
yeah,
the number of data points that you have when you're analyzing it is small enough that it's
yeah, it's
okay.
We have fewer households, and so yeah, exactly. We just
okay. So it's like statistical unreliability, just like not that it's a bad source.
Yeah.
Just to be clear. Yeah. Okay. I'm curious about, so you talked about the future of the coalition. So in the beginning, you talked about there's a 9-person steering committee and the action plan. So for the future of the coalition, is it, as you sort of check the boxes on the action plan, is it the steering committee that makes the decisions about the future of the coalition?
I mean, I think as I said in the presentation, I think one of the deciding factors will be like, do we have any money to continue this work, right?
Okay.
And, you know, to date, we've been running on the hamster wheel of grant funding, which and philanthropic gifts, while we've seen an incredible amount of generosity from the community in like bringing that funding together to support my position for 3 years, it's not sustainable.
Right.
And we also don't really know how implementation will look moving forward. So I think those two questions will have to be addressed by the steering committee, by me working with the steering committee, and by what we're hearing from other folks in the community about like what the need for this is and, you know, how we could be most impactful.
So it's like a little bit to be determined depending on, does the county, can you remind me, does the county contribute at all?
No, but they were our partners in applying for the Community Development Block Grant Housing Stabilization Program funding. And Kristen Galbraith is the financial officer for that. So she's keeping everything, she's keeping records for that and being our partner there. But they have not contributed to my position.
But your position serves the whole county. You don't just serve the city of Livingston residents.
That's correct.
Okay. And then I was curious, you know more than I do about this, so I'm just gonna ask about the appropriate and viable revenue sources.
Yeah.
I'm assuming like voter approved funds would be something that goes through the county government or the city government to taxpayers. Like that is to say, we vote to put it on the ballot and then voters have to decide if they want money to go to this. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Either people petition to have it put on a ballot, a governing body makes a decision to put it on a ballot, and then folks vote. So the example that we looked at with our steering committee, although there are lots of other very different examples, are Missoula's Housing Trust Fund, which went to voters. There are also other avenues like resort area districts, which would also be created either through a petition or an action of a governing body, and then voted upon by members of the public.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then what are voluntary fees and membership fees in this context?
Yeah, so the example that we looked at for voluntary fees is really cool. It's called, it's known as 1% for Whitefish, but it's called their Community Support Fund, and it was established. I think it was established in 2006. But at the time, Whitefish was trying to recruit more tourism. They felt like they were sort of not performing well on that measure. And yeah, so their visitors bureau created this 1% fund to raise more money to basically do more outreach to promote Whitefish as a destination, tourist destination. Those efforts, as we all know, were wildly successful and sort of tipped the community in the other direction. So people then started protesting. This is information that I got from folks at the Visitors Bureau. So this is their story told to me. Folks started protesting. And then sometime around 2020, they decided to allocate some of the funding that they were collecting through this voluntary fee to housing. So that goes to Housing Whitefish, which is a nonprofit organization in Whitefish. And that money is used to fund Daniel Sitter, who's the director of the executive director up there, and their workforce housing program. So how the fee works in Whitefish is businesses who choose to participate add a 1% fee, that 1% for Whitefish, to the end of their receipts for things related to tourism. If a customer doesn't want to pay that 1%, they can request to have it removed at the point of sale. And sometimes they do. And then the Visitors Bureau reaches out to participating businesses on a monthly basis to say, hey, will you please send us the revenue that you collected from that additional 1% fee? Then a portion of that fee goes to Housing Whitefish for their operations, and then a portion of it goes back into the tourism activities in Whitefish. So that was a model that we looked at. Again, it's one in which businesses can opt into if they choose. That is different from membership fees somewhat, because the membership model that we looked at was Bozeman Tenants United, which again, we're not trying to model or become Bozeman Tenants United, but they are explicitly a membership-based housing organization. And they're, I think about 20, last time I spoke with the executive director there, about 20% of their operating funds came from membership fees. Up until pretty recently, they had a sliding scale with no floor. So you could become a member of Bozeman Tenants United without paying a membership fee. They want to increase their revenue from membership fees to decrease their reliance on philanthropic gifts and grants. And so they have now created a floor, or will soon implement a floor, as I understand it. And sort of their organization is set up in a way that focuses on building the capacity of members. So pretty much all of their work is focused on creating power among the members of Bozeman Tenants United. So it's training them to be organizers, working with them to identify priorities, holding meetings where they identify priorities. So they're a heavily membership focused organization, and that is related to the funding mechanism, which is membership fees. So that's part of why we wanted to look at these examples, is to better understand how the funding mechanism relates to the operations of the organization moving forward, right?
No, that's super helpful. Thank you. I didn't know most of that.
Neither did I before this.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's like great. I'm glad that I asked. And then perhaps this is another TBD, but I'm just gonna ask it just in case it's not a to be determined, but the administration of a potential Park County Housing Fund, is that also to be determined based on not having a crystal ball?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why when you see on that like second to last slide under administration, you know, depending upon how the fund is set up and how the funding from that fund is disseminated, different organizations could have more or less expertise in that role, right? So Park Local Development Corporation already runs a revolving loan for business purposes. So, you know, they could theoretically have the capacity to, if we were to set up a revolving loan, run something like that. NeighborWorks Montana runs the Gallatin Impact Fund, which is also set up as sort of a revolving source of funding. Park County Community Foundation has expertise in grant making, right? So we're evaluating our landscape to see what existing organizations already have expertise and capacity and potential interest in helping getting funds out the door. We want to be as efficient with this as possible, so.
I guess I don't really know the origin story of the housing fund. You mentioned that there was like a subcommittee. I was never on this coalition. That was like one of the only things I haven't been on, I don't think, since I've been. Can you share a little bit more about how that came to be? Because this part was new to me. I don't remember this.
Yeah,
coming
this was
us
before I got involved
Yeah.
as well. So I would actually turn it over to Commissioner Kale. But I mean, I can speak to that, but Commissioner Kale was more closely involved at this stage. Is that something that you would feel comfortable?
I mean, I think that I will like try to sort of remember and go into that if you'd like me to. At the beginning, when we started just getting folks together, saying that we needed to create a housing coalition, or could we create a housing coalition? And before we identified that we needed someone to run the coalition and find funding for that, we had broken that group up into a couple of different subgroups to just look at opportunities or things that other areas were doing around affordable housing and what could make a difference in the community. And one of those things was a fund. And so we had some conversations about that. I remember we met with one of the co-op organizations, and it wasn't even Park County Local, it was a true co-op organization that was doing co-ops across the state to see if that would be a model for a fund and what that might look like. And just talked with, I think, you know, we talked with employers in the area and other folks to just identify what folks needed or what we thought would make a difference, and looked at different models. And so I think I was on that subcommittee about the fund and what that might look like. So it was some of the baby steps of the organization, you know, of the organization to look at what might be helpful models. And that seemed one that had some legs to it, I think, in all the conversations that we had about different ideas.
So was that before we passed the housing action plan or after we passed the action? Because it's not in the
After.
housing action plan.
No, it was kind of like around the time that was passed. I think that subcommittee, so HRDC's current community development director, Lila Fleischman, my supervisor, led the work of those subcommittees, which I believe started in June or July of 2022. And then continued through the spring, like April, I would say, of 2023. And there were 3 subcommittees. One was focused on a community investment fund, and they came up with this framework because there was agreement among the sort of group that led to the 3 subcommittees that sort of a funding source would be necessary for the continuation of these efforts, and would make the community more resilient to sort of changes in funding availability at the federal level, for example. Another subcommittee was working on essentially workforce housing, and that was actually the subcommittee that came up with the recommendation to focus on accessory dwelling units, interestingly enough. And then a third subcommittee, I think, was focused on storytelling and communication, and I don't think they got too far.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for bringing us everything in a tidy package every time you come. And for serving county residents, even though the county doesn't pay for you. Yeah, and just for being here tonight and answering all these questions, because I like to ask detailed questions, and I appreciate that you're always able to answer them. So thank you, Catherine, for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I'm happy to answer questions outside of the meeting as well. Feel free to email or call. So
I yield.
Thank you, Catherine. Great work. Any other commissioners?
Catherine, I just say thank you. I know Catherine's been going all over the community giving a presentation about this. This is, I've seen this presentation once before already, which is great. I think this one was maybe just a little bit different. So thank you. I appreciate this. And there's always really great information. And I think the handouts that I got from the last time I saw this presentation, which was just a few weeks ago, have already like come apart and disappeared because I was using them so much. So I might have to try to get some more handouts from you.
I can send this.
Thanks again, Catherine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At 7:15, do I have a motion to take a 10-minute break?
I'll make a motion to take a 10-minute break.
All in favor?
Bye.
We adjourn at 7:25. All right, this meeting of Livingston City Commission reconvenes at 7:25. Moving on to action items. First action item A is a withdrawal of resolution 5157. A resolution of City of Livingston, Montana annexing the parcel at 38 Loves Lane. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Schwartz. The item before you folks is a continued hearing from the April 1st meeting, which in itself was continued from the March 18th meeting. And it was for the annexation of a parcel at 38 Loves Lane. That application has been withdrawn by the applicants in light of conversations that occurred at the last meeting. And so no action is required here. And if it pleases the commission, my recommendation is to close the item and move forward with the agenda.
Do I have a motion?
Do we need a motion? What are you?
Or-
from us?
No, you
No.
folks can, if, you know, there's.
Any questions?
No comments?
Regarding that? We need to open that for public comment or
No,
no action
because
on
it
it,
was a
so-
continued public hearing. We
Public
had the
hearing.
Public comment at the prior meetings.
very well. Moving on, action item B, a resolution 5159, a resolution of the City of Livingston, Montana, annexing the parcel at 38 Loves Lane. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Schwartz. The item before the commission is an application that has been submitted for an annexation at 38 Loves Lane. This application has been submitted by the owner of record, and the application itself is compliant with the city's annexation policy. It is materially the same as the prior application that was withdrawn, and so I am happy, if it pleases the commission, to work through a PowerPoint I have prepared on the annexation. It very closely resembles a PowerPoint that you have seen before. Happy to do it in a more abridged summary version to be respectful of the commission's time this evening, but happy to do it in the full version if it pleases the commission as well.
Commissioners? Any thoughts?
Sure, why don't we run through it real quick? Just
The
to remind
abridged
ourselves
version,
of
the
where everything
abridged
is.
version, perhaps?
Sure.
I'd be happy to.
Mr. Gager,
Commissioners.
go ahead,
Yes.
without objection.
It's B1.
You want to ask any questions on it?
Well,
Do you have any questions?
yeah.
So as noted, we are here for petition for annexation or annexation by petition for a parcel at 38 Loves Lane. And as has been done in the past, I will very briefly run through the annexation by petition process, the city's local development process, and the 38 Loves Lane application. Annexations by petition are guided by Title VII, Chapter 2, Part 46 of Montana Code Annotated, which states that an annexation that has been submitted by the owners of more than 50% of the real property to be annexed does not need to actually be placed by the voters and can be acted upon by the governing body of a municipality. And it is important to note that Part 46 stands on its own unless other sections are specifically referenced in Part 46. And that specifically does include the fact that there is no noticing requirement in Part 46, and that was a subject that came up in a prior iteration of this application. Also, important to note that services must be provided in accordance with a plan. The specifics of that plan are included here, and they do include the extension of police, fire, garbage, street maintenance service to the area to be annexed, and also provide for the future extension of streets, water mains, sewer outfall lines, and other utility services in the area to be annexed. Additionally, the method to finance the extension of services must be included, and it must be clearly stated whether the entire municipality intends to share the tax burden for these services. And then finally, the plan must provide for the orderly transfer of those services. Now, when we focus on the development process in the city of Livingston, for projects such as this, as I noted in our earlier or prior meeting, the annexation really is the first step in a long process. Following annexation, if a parcel is annexed, it proceeds to the Consolidated Land Use Board for contemplation of the zoning to be applied to the parcel. That recommendation from the Consolidated Land Use Board will make its way up to the City Commission in the form of a map amendment ordinance. And ordinances in the state of Montana do require 2 readings and then 30 days to take effect. And so based on the timing and where we sit today, we would not expect that the zoning on this parcel, if it is annexed, would be effective in July. And then, as we discussed in a bit more detail last time, following the zoning would be a site plan review process, which really kicks off the development of the parcel. Site plan review, as I noted last time, applies to certain projects, including those that have 10 or more dwelling units on a single lot, 10,000 square feet or more of gross commercial or industrial floor area, 10,000 or more square feet of outdoor storage area, 20 or more parking spaces, or any addition to an existing use that satisfies the above criteria. And it's important to note that no building permit shall be issued until the application for site plan review has been approved. And what exactly is site plan review? Well, site plan review includes a number of both general and specific requirements. General information is shown here on the screen, includes the application form, a map, engineering design report, copies of the plats and proposed uses of all structures on site, and number and density of dwelling units if applicable. More specifically, and I do apologize for the small type, it is somewhat, I don't want to say onerous, but it is detailed in our requirements of all applicants for site plan review. And so we do require items such as boundaries, project phasing, certainly a scale and the location and width of all on-site and adjacent rights of way, including street design conforming to the city's public works design standards, a grading and drainage plan conforming to our public works design standards. That helps us assess the stormwater capacity and treatment on the site. Again, location of all proposed structures on the site, including the distance to property lines and square footage. If there are building plans contemplated, building plans, location and design of fences and walls, landscaping plans, parking plans, diagrams on showing site ingress and egress, a lighting plan, a trash enclosure plan and related screening, utility plan, sign plan, and FEMA floodplain mapping requirements if the project is required within the 100-year floodplain. But the city also has the ability to require additional plans and studies. And so in certain circumstances, we do require a traffic impact study, a flood study, a letter from the Historic Preservation Office, and all state, local, and federal permits associated with the site plan. So the application for the parcel at 38 Loves Lane was accompanied by a map of the parcel, as we have previously discussed. Interstate 90 is located directly to the north of the parcel. Interstate 90 in this area of the interstate has been annexed into the city, making this lot fully contiguous to other parts of the city. And then we see it is bounded by Miller Lane to the east and Loves Lane to the south. The parcel as it sits now does have water and sewer to the eastern boundary, southeastern corner of the parcel. And as the project moves forward, as I indicated, site plan review would be required to assess stormwater, access and traffic, parking, landscaping, screening, and fire and life safety. The property, because it is owned by a private owner, is taxable, and the city would receive tax revenue from the parcel. This application is compliant with the city's annexation policy, and it is important to note, as we have discussed before, that development potential, including for a building with this sewer and water requirements, that development potential does exist on the site even without annexation. The expected water requirements of development on this site are far below those of an exempt well in Park County and in the state of Montana. And so, as I noted, this application for annexation, petition for annexation, is compliant with the city's annexation policy. And just as a refresher, we ran through this in significantly more detail last time, but the parcel is in the city services growth area. Utility work for the parcel would be done, would not be done prior to annexation, as is required by the annexation policy, and impacts to transportation, solid waste collection and emergency services have been considered in the review of this petition at a staff level. Also, the annexation policy does have a stated priority for infill annexations, although it's important to note that it does not have a restriction against non-infill annexations as well. It's simply a stated priority for infill. And then additionally, utility extensions into non-contiguous areas of the city are discouraged. As I noted, this area is contiguous to the city and indeed to the city's utility infrastructure, and a waiver of annexation protest, which is something that by virtue of the petition for annexation, that is clearly not applicable in this time, because this again is an owner requested annexation. And so at this point, I will stand for any questions that the commission may have, and I will point out that there are some members of the team that are in the room and online that are available to stand for questions the commission may have as well.
Well, start with clarifying questions, anybody? They weren't clarified the last two times. Commissioner Lyons, anything? No. Commissioner Kale.
I'll ask a question. Mr. Gager, and I apologize, I should have dug into code a little bit more, but maybe you can answer this question for me. Isn't there a provision when we're in properties where we are right now, where we're very close to the county or the county city, very close, and we have city utilities so close to a property that, particularly with, I'm more maybe concerned about sewer, but sewer and water, if they're within 200 feet of a county property, even if that property is in the county, can't we require them to hook up to those services if it's, I think twice, if it's less than twice the amount of a sewer, of a septic tank and a well?
Yeah, quite simply, while some of the numbers are a little different than what you stated, yes, there is that provision in state code, and you may recall that we actually did have that situation out in the Green Acres area with the development that occurred adjacent to the city limits, and that project was required to hook up to city water and sewer at their own expense. Yes.
But if they're not in the city, we wouldn't get, if they hooked up to our services, if they're not in the city and county residents, they're not paying taxes. Is that correct to the city? Okay. I have other thoughts, but I think they're more thoughts than questions. So.
Commissioner Hoops, clarify. Before I open up public comment.
You surprised?
Huh?
You surprised?
Yeah, no, I'm not. All right, we'll now open Open up for public comment on resolution 5159, annexing parcel at 38 Loves Lane. Please come to the podium, state your name and address. And you have 4 minutes. And I will acknowledge, Dave and Patsy Carter, I did get your letter, so thank you. That's it. Will be entered into the record.
Is that the same from last time? Is that the same comment from last time that you gave?
I
us?
don't know.
No, it's different.
It's different. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
It was in our inboxes today. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. First want to say I appreciate being able to come up here a third time to comment on this topic.
Say your name real quick, please.
Jamie Adams,
Jamie,
76
thank
Canyon
you.
View Drive.
I got a short memory.
That's okay. I needed to say that at the beginning anyways. I took some time to look at the growth policy that was adopted in 2001, and there's 4 maps in there that I just wanted to point out. Exhibit 3.3, which is called Recent Annexations and Extra Jurisdictional Areas Facing Development Pressure Map, doesn't include 38 Loves Lane, meaning there was no anticipated or desired annexation in this area, nor was it identified as a property under annexation pressure. So it seemed to me that at the time this was area that the city was not intended to grow into. Exhibit 8.1 titled Road Network. It already identified the eastern section of Loves Lane as a major collector, and as such already has capacity restraints on existing traffic. I know that's been a huge concern from public comment on traffic in the area. It looks like you guys already have agreed with that and just concerned about the impact of additional traffic with this annexation. Exhibit 2.9, which is down in the appendix, titled Recommended Future Land Use Map, identified 38 Loves Lane and West as medium density residential as the future recommended. So, you know, I'm questioning if this ends up being commercial, is that in compliant with the growth policy? And the final map I'll bring up is Exhibit 2.1, Extraterritorial Jurisdiction Study Area Boundary. From what I can tell, looking at this and looking at the Park County zoning map, which is on the ArcGIS, I am not convinced that the property of I-90 north of that property on 90 is actually annexed into the city. It looks like I-90 is annexed into the city a little more east of this property, which leads me to believe that all 4 sides of this property is actually county and not city. I'd also like to point out that the annexation policy hasn't been updated since 2006. And the adopted growth policy in 2021, strategy 3.1.17 states that as a goal, objective, or strategy to be completed within the near term, within 3 to 5 years of 2021, it's to evaluate, amend, and strengthen the city's annexation policy to ensure the goals and objectives of our growth policy are considered during the annexation process. So it seems like this goal is something that should be coming up shortly for the commission. And so it just seems in context of the commission's decision to hold off on any of the development by the hospital because of the FEMA maps that are coming out next year. Maybe the annexation of this property should be delayed until the new annexation policy comes out. And then lastly, just want to point out, you know, does the city really want to take on the burden of what annexation will lead to? Long and lengthy zoning discussions, plan site reviews that may take months or years, include potential fierce and combative public comment. The commission oversight of very minor detail of development to ensure the site follows city planning guidelines to a T, additional street maintenance of plowing snow, keeping up with deteriorating roads to increase traffic, and the public complaints that will follow when not done timely. The administration burden of garbage collection, tax collection, updating maps, taking tree inventory, and so on. And, you know, for what? To annex 1 parcel into the city. Just because a request has been received, does it have to be granted? Shouldn't there be an equal consideration by the city? This is what they want. It seems like an incredible amount of work for the city to take on, and I'm not sure the benefit is worth it. And I advocate denying the annexation because there's little or no benefit to the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Commission, for hearing us. Which nut is the peanut under now? I might ask. So one technicality has been resolved in abandonment and reapplying for this. That my wife will read the letter. I hope you all have got a copy. I hope you've all looked at it.
Hey, Dave,
So
could you
there's-
state your name?
Dave Carter,
Thank you.
sorry.
That's okay.
The history still remains. The only thing that's changed, nothing for the positive, but the history has been pretty much a negative story, and the most negative part of the aspect of the story is how there's never regard, there's never consequences, there's never any positive change after the mistakes are made when we develop and don't address traffic, don't address road widths, don't address the fact that we're in 2025 moving forward and there's more cars on the road than there were in 1905. I don't know if I told you this story, but when Murdoch's and Taco Bell went in, and that street's 28 feet wide. I was working on a remodel renovation on South Second Street, which is a narrower street than further uptown. Now I was curious because now there are over the road trucks parked on the city side of the curb, the other side of the street's county. And I went out and measured curb to curb in front of my house on South Second Street, and I got 45 feet. That house was built in 1905. And just want to reiterate, if I did mention this before, there was one car in Livingston, the Crony Mobile. Anyone remember that? One car in Livingston, and we've got a street 45 feet wide. But in 2018 or 19, 28 feet is plenty for highway commercial. Mr. Gager insists that Billman Creek Lane is not an access to that property on Love's Lane. To which I just want to say, if you live down on South Fifth, does that mean you're never going to drive home going on Yellowstone or Callender or Clark, or you're going to have your options? And those options are going to be based on what's traffic look like ahead of me. Do I need to take a left or a right to avoid an incident or a delay? So I just want to say, there is not access to substantiate any more traffic. So you can annex this now, and we can get the traffic study later. And I won't hold my breath on how that traffic study is going to pass. But again, I just want to say the most important things have been the negative impacts, and you people, just like you did Willow, and if you park a car on each side of the curb on Willow, on each side of the street on Willow, 2 cars cannot pass. And that's in that area. And that meets your stringent road standards. And I just want you to be thoughtful about who you're throwing under the bus, because I'm tired of crawling out from under the bus. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave.
Want me to right over?
Oh, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Patsy Carter. And I just want you to know that in the last couple of years, we've had at least 3 incidents that I can think of out on the 5 acre tracks in this area. One was when the RY train derailed. That plugs up Highway 89 south. The people are driving all over looking for a place to get south. Or if they're coming from the south, they're looking for how to get into Livingston. Another time, somebody ran into a telephone pole on Billman Lane as it heads up to the wine glass, plugged up traffic. And then there was a fire. Actually, I think there've been 2 fires within the last year or 2, and causes emergency situations. Well, then there was the one on the wine glass last summer, so that's 3 fires. Emergency trucks, vehicles going up and down, trying to get to the town pump to fill their water tanks, and things can happen. And then winters are different every year, but if you haven't lived here very long, or you haven't lived out on the 5-acre tracts when there's 2 feet of snow and the wind's blowing, Love's Lane can get plugged. And if it becomes city, I would like to think that there's gonna be snowplows addressing this, but I witnessed what happened in the city of Livingston this winter, and there wasn't a lot of snow plowing going on. If you don't plow Love's Lane with all the traffic that goes up and down, it's gonna be a problem. So these are things, I don't know if you people have driven out there and looked around, but thank you for giving us a chance to talk. Thank you for the reading this letter. I'm just gonna try to, quickly read it and highlight it. As long-standing members of the community residing within the 5-acre tracts near the proposed annexation site, historically, this area has supported a rural agrarian lifestyle, families with horses, goats, and cows, reflecting a deep-rooted connection to the land and way of life many of us moved here to preserve. Though change is inevitable, it must be approached with careful consideration and respect for the existing character of the area. This proposal, however, appears to benefit a narrow interest, namely non-resident developers whose sole objective is to extract short-term financial gain. They bring no long-term investment, commitment to community values, or understanding of the burdens their projects place on existing residents. This kind of speculative development undermines the intent of both Montana state annexation statutes and Park County planning regulations, which emphasize sustainable growth, community input, and infrastructure adequacy. Number 1, inadequate transportation infrastructure, annexation guidelines. Your own city's Montana code annotated and your city's own annexation guidelines require a demonstrated capacity to support increased traffic and infrastructure demands. The roads serving this area, Willow Drive, Miller Lane, Billman Lane, and Canyon View, are narrow rural streets, not designed for the density proposed. For example, Willow Drive fails to meet the required street width and traffic standards, as 2 cars cannot safely pass when vehicles are parked on either side. Similarly, Billman Lane was annexed and allowed to remain at only 28 feet wide, far below city standards due to deference to MDT specifications. Today, it routinely sees congestion and unsafe conditions due to commercial vehicle parking. Is that my timer?
Yes, ma'am, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
doggone it. All right.
Thanks, Patsy.
Thank you.
Any other public comment in the room?
Thank you. Passing this around. We will please go and see. I've attached the comments by the Friends of Park County from last time, just because it focused attention on the main issues, but so I wanted to call attention to the pictures at the end of this, okay? I, I am an environmentalist first. And when Jennifer Magic and Michelle LeBlanc and I worked so hard to get the growth policy going. And then when we all actively were involved in the growth policy, we had such hopes for it. Smart growth was part of that, so that we would grow from the city out. We wouldn't grow sporadically in different places. To me, this is one of the most important issues that has come before the city commission. I believe that is like, as an environmentalist, like the development in Zeus Creek, and that it was taken up by the Park County Environmental Council. The future of the 5-acre tracts is absolutely essential to the survival of our downtown. And I want to just quickly say that this is nothing like, this does not comply with the city's growth policy, and certainly what we envisioned. If you look at the pictures on the first, this was not the planned growth that we ever planned for Livingston, Montana. It has nothing to do with it. And if you look at the picture down below, that is a farm that's 25 feet from this, what you are planning, with a 23,000 square foot building. If you look at the next pictures, you will see that you can't even see the mountains from what is there, as opposed to 25 feet from this. My friend Jeff Hill raises those wonderful Highland cattle on the farm that was the original homestead for all of this area. And there's just a picture of his farm. So 25 feet from what apparently is this commission's idea of growth, which is here. And this commission apparently likes this. As an environmentalist, I don't. And it is not even close to what we envisioned when we worked so hard to create a growth policy. It is also not consistent with our downtown master plan, which says we should increase office space opportunities and help activate the downtown during the day. We would love to have had this in the downtown, part of our smart growth. And our city annexation policy is outdated, 2006. So if the commission decides to go ahead with this, I believe they're making the mistake of their careers here. And I liken this to okaying the development on Zeus Creek if you were in the county. We are looking at the future of the 5-acre tracts. It's a significant that part of what's going to be happening in their future. And this is absolutely not the way to start. Our growth policy is. Thank you.
Any other public comment in the room? Seeing none, let's turn online. Any public comment online? Please raise your hand. I see Randy Carpenter has his hand up. Please go ahead, Randy, state your name.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Randy Carpenter, representing Friends of Park County. I mean, you've read and heard my comments in opposition to this annexation. I mean, nothing has really changed. You know, this annexation is at odds with the growth policy and the downtown plan. The annexation policy is way out of date. There's an uncertainty regarding the proposed use as a federal building. You know, this annexation needs more analysis, for instance, a fiscal impact analysis. And, you know, there really should be an annexation agreement in place before the annexation to reduce the risk for the city. You know, not all these issues can be addressed or best addressed at site plans, such as who's responsible for infrastructure extensions. Will there be a payback agreement? You know, who gets the water rights? I'd also add that it's really quite unusual to not assign a zoning designation immediately after annexation. That is, at the same meeting in which annexation's adopted. I've never done it that way before. And really, this decision should wait for the adoption of the new zoning code to ensure compatibility. And also, annexations really should be heard first by the planning board. This is a land use issue, and you really should consult with the county. Now, not all of these things are required by statute, for sure, if you're using Part 46. They're just a good idea. But again, the primary objection is that this annexation doesn't conform to the growth policy. And the growth policy is important, it's the expressed will of the residents. And I saw no argument that it does conform to the growth policy. The last thing I'll say is that the community's built environment, which to a great extent determines community character, is made one decision at a time, and this is one of those times. Decisions like these determine whether Livingston has more than a boutique downtown, that it has a thriving downtown with office workers during the day, or is this a community with highway strip development and office parks? That's the decision you're making tonight. And with these land use decisions, you only get one crack at it. You don't get to come back and fix it later. Almost 30 years ago, the Postal Service was considering moving the post office outside of the downtown. But the community came together and made sure that the post office stayed downtown. And can you imagine if the post office was out west on Park Street, like the Postal Service planned? So I hope you consider the lesson of the fight for the post office, as well as a lesson from the decision to annex the West Interchange, a decision that I'm guessing most of you would like to revisit, but of course you can't. So again, these decisions you just can't take back, and community character is made one decision at a time. So thank you for the opportunity to comment, and thanks for your community service.
Thank you, Randy.
David Lewis.
David Lewis, come off mute.
Howdy. I think it's a little ironic. David Lewis, 16 Willow Bend Lane. I think it's a little ironic that the very business that would go there is for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, as I understand it. And yet it would have a negative impact on people that live in an agricultural area. It's kind of crazy. I've lived here 38 years, and I've driven that area a lot, and it's not fun to drive down Love's Lane and into the 5-acre tracts the way things currently are, with the narrow streets everywhere. I really empathize with the Carters, and the last gentleman, Randy, is very erudite and I think nailed everything. Thank you, Randy. You've done your research. I'm wondering, with the current federal cuts that's happening with DOGE, what's actually going to happen with the federal money that could be behind this? Is it actually going to happen? I mean, what is going to happen? I have no clue. I would like to know what would be in that building and why they require it, and where the people are that are going to be, where do the people live now that are going to be working there? Are they bringing in other offices, other jobs from other areas into the Livingston area? Or is it just a gigantic governmental bureaucratic waste of taxpayer money to do something that a few years from now could be a boondoggle? So I'm just asking questions. I don't know all the answers. I think you really have to study this a bit more, and I very much agree with the statement that you should work with the county, because county people are invested in their properties, and they should be heard more than just the city deciding to get the revenue or to implement something that the federal government wants to do in our area. I think it should be somewhere totally else. It doesn't make any sense to me as a resident of the county and someone who works in the city regularly to have this at that place with the impacts, all the impacts that you haven't really completely considered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Any other public comment online? Please come off mute or raise your hand. Going once. Seeing no public comment online, I'll go one more time back into the room. Any public comment in the room? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Commissioners. Deliberation. Would like to go.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna pontificate to start. How about this? I generally tend to agree with what I've heard, that with my experience with the growth policy, this doesn't actually fit. This is growing on the very fringe of the city and not starting even remotely anywhere near the inside of the city. But I also have questions about what the end result is of all of our deliberations and conversations. I hear that people don't want the city to annex the property itself. That's fine. But really, I think the underlying problem is people don't want that building there. They don't want that project. So the way I see it is we have two ways we can go. The city can annex the property, move forward that way, perhaps at odds with our growth policy, but then there's a whole line of site review, design standards, a whole host of things that are required on a property if you want to develop it within the city limits. Outside of the city limits, there is none of that. So this building is 22,000 square feet and change, whatever. They can make it 122,000 square feet, make it 75 feet tall. We don't get to say anything about it. The people of Park County don't get to say anything about it. They've decided that they don't want to have zoning. They don't want to have these regulations. So I'm conflicted as I think about this. And I think about property rights. The owners of the property have rights as well as the people that live next door. And I think those rights stop at the property line. So I think we've got some talking to do, and I just wanted to get the conversation started. So
Yeah, thanks for getting going. Maybe we can do the pros and cons and go that way. You want to?
I want to, if I may, I'd like to just get a little clarification.
Sure.
First,
I
if
have
I
a few
can.
questions also.
Yeah.
Okay.
First, the clarification is I can see within this new application from the property owner that there is no site plan. And I think that one thing that we need to take into consideration at this point is really, are we even evaluating that? Because we should, and I will ask Mr. Gager this, but I don't even know that we ought to be, because if we annex this property, the property owner will have the right to do whatever they want on that property. They're not locked into this building or the building that we saw in the previous application. This application doesn't even include that building. So I think that for me, I feel like we need to be looking at this in a broader scheme of, are we going to annex it? And I'm curious to know what the
Let's answer
owner-
the clarifying question.
But I think this will follow up also what the owner is contemplating for zoning, because to me, those are the things that we should be looking at, not a site plan.
Mr. Gager, I do believe that it's not required, but I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. You are correct. This phase in the process really does not require or under state code even contemplate any discussion of really the use of the land in the development process. And that said, the current applicant has really not told us what they would do with the property. That said, I do want to acknowledge there was a prior application for this land, and in the spirit of full disclosure, that applicant did state their intended use for the property and did acknowledge that they have a future tenant for a certain type of building. But you're absolutely correct. The question before the commission this evening is annexation. It is not zoning, it is not development approval, it is simply annexation.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Now,
Yeah, I've got some questions. Is that okay?
sure, oh, yeah, I forgot you had Cliff.
So, there was a question or a comment or question brought up about, I actually think there were multiple comments about, holding off on the action until an updated annexation policy is in place. I'm curious, Mr. Gager, can you envision any ways in which a future annexation policy would produce a different result, or would like a policy where the process might differ from what we've gone through with the past 3 meetings on this one?
Well, that's a fantastic question, Commissioner. And I guess, to be honest with you, the answer to that question is I really don't know. Having been here for 2.5 years, I would envision a very large process when we talk about reviewing the annexation policy, because up there with subdivision regulations and our zoning code, it is one of those important regulatory tools that we have.
And to be clear, it hasn't been, the annexation policy has not been incorporated into our zoning code update. Is that right?
That is correct. It is a standalone. And so I would envision a standalone public engagement process, outreach process where, information is solicited and then eventually a growth services area map or, some equivalent thereof is developed, which is to say, A, I believe that is a very lengthy process. B, the outcome of that process is uncertain as we sit here today. But I would acknowledge that the development pattern in that area is relatively congruent with this request. There are commercial buildings on Love's Lane. It is a bi-directional. It is a part of the city's urban route network with the state of Montana. And so, and there is adequate water and sewer capacity in the area. And so, from that standpoint, again, the future is not certain, but there are many ingredients and many building blocks to support development present in that area.
Thank you. If the parcel were to remain in the county and not be annexed into the city, could the parcel be developed in the manner that was illustrated in the previous packets that we looked at?
It's my belief, based on conversations with the city's planning department, building department, public works, and fire and rescue department, that yes, the project could be built as it was previously proposed without being in city limits.
Meaning it would be developed, what is the county's process for evaluating that development? Is there one?
To the best of my knowledge, they would need a septic permit. And because of the proximity to the city's system, that would trigger a conversation with the city. But outside of the septic permit, there are no requirements for a structure like this in the county that I'm aware of.
So if there's a market demand, as evidenced by the applicant coming to us, if there's a market demand for that structure and the parcel remains in the county, the process through which that development will be evaluated is strictly a septic permit.
That's correct.
That's the end of my questions. Thank you.
You want to facilitate that?
I have a question.
Okay.
First.
Fine.
So picking up where Commissioner Lyons sort of left off, one of the questions we had from the public was about the development of nearby storage units whereby like large trees were removed and there was gravel placed very deep in the ground so that vegetation probably wouldn't grow there again. That's in the county, correct?
That is correct.
Do we allow that in the city?
No.
No, we don't allow that in the city, so. That's just like an example, I guess, thinking about some of the questions at the other end of the table. County versus city. The other point that was brought up that I thought was interesting because I like process was that we should have had zoning at the same time as annexation, which I don't know that that's really what Livingston Municipal Code or state code for that matter would say. It's my recollection that we've had quite a few landowners adjacent to Livingston request annexation, which is a commission decision. And our land use board doesn't talk about zoning county land. Like that would be wildly, I don't know, illegal, maybe even, dare I say. It's definitely against like state code. So do you have any clarity that you would offer on the process about our order of operations here for why the city does things the way we do things?
No, it is a fantastic observation, Vice Chair Nunes. As I sat here thinking about it, I'm not certain that the process that was represented by one commenter is a process that would be legal for us to follow here in Park County. There are other counties in the state that have consolidated city county planning boards and land use boards that may be able to act in that fashion, but no, as I mentioned earlier, the zoning process does rightly start with our consolidated land use board and a hearing there and recommendation from there. And there are noticing requirements associated with that process. And so, no, I think that the process that was referenced very clearly was in another jurisdiction because the legal requirements of a city consolidated land use board are not congruent with that process.
Okay, thank you. That's what I think we very much don't talk about zoning county land because it's not our jurisdiction. So thank you. And this is to, I think, Commissioner Kale's point, just reiterating. The county doesn't have zoning. There was some mention of a commenter about a planning zoning map, a county zoning map, but I don't know what that's referencing unless it's like citizen initiated zones, because the county doesn't have a zoning map, as far as I know.
Billboards, they have billboard zoning.
They have billboard
That
zoning.
just came to me, but
Yeah,
yes,
but that's a little bit different than,
but still a zone. So,
and so I'm thinking about if this were annexed, what the property owner would be locked into, to use your words, they would be locked into whatever the zone allows. So folks would be concerned about what would go on that property. That's a little bit different than the county, right? The county can have a lot more ability to do what they want without considering their neighbors in the county. In the city, they have to follow zoning and go through a very public process before they can determine even what they can do with their land once they're in the city. And then they're locked into whatever that zone allows, which might be residential, it might not be residential, and so on. Is there anything you would add about that? I think that's an important consideration about sort of the order of operations of how decisions are made, which is very different than the county.
Yes, they are very clearly distinctly different processes here in the city. Ours, I won't call it onerous, but ours is more rigorous.
Yeah.
With more requirements. And I think I would add that in the vicinity of this parcel and there is the new Gateway Overlay District zoning has been applied. And, it is stated that that applies to commercial and industrial properties on the city's gateways. And so as we look at this, this parcel, it sure does seem like a candidate for that gateway overlay zoning district because it is visible from Interstate 90 and very close to the exit 333.
Thank you. I think that's all the clarifying questions I have right now before we turn to conversations.
Sure, I have one more. If I'm-
Certainly.
Mr. Gager, your response to my last question about, whether or not the earlier envisioned building could be developed without being annexed made me curious what the benefit of annexation is to the applicant. So could you give us any ideas why an applicant might ask to be annexed if they could avoid dealing with city rigmarole by not doing that?
Certainly, I think a great example is one of the other two annexations that has occurred in my time here, and that is the former RY Timber, current Sun Mountain Lumber property, which was a commercial operation somewhat similar to this. And without adequate fire protection, it was not a guarantee that that business would be able to operate as a going concern unless they invested in certain fire suppression infrastructure on their property. They found it much more cost beneficial to use the city's system rather than maintaining a very, very large reservoir on that property. This is a much smaller property with a significantly lower fire risk profile. And so when we talk to the chief, it's very likely that a self-contained fire suppression system could be constructed on this property using an exempt well, basically. And so that really is one of the main benefits we see when we talk to folks that would like commercial businesses that would like to annex into the county. It is access to the fire suppression system and the avoidance of certain insurance and other infrastructure costs that may go along with that. That is one of the primary benefits to commercial property owners.
Thank you. One follow-up question on that. And if this is outside of your area of expertise, that's entirely possible. And I wouldn't ask for an answer if you don't feel like you can answer it expertly. That drawing that we saw of the building, I understand, I know within my area of expertise that it took some degree of professional input to create that drawing. I bet there were engineers aplenty working on that one drawing. How much do you expect that cost to produce that drawing? And just to be as transparent as possible, the scenario that I'm considering is that the drawing was created as a straw man. As a less impactful use than is actually planned by the applicant. So I'm thinking quite cynically, and I'm asking you, how much do you think it would cost to produce such a drawing?
So I guess I would offer that we probably have the person who created the drawing in the room. I'm not sure if he wants to chat about, his billings, but, it is clear from our conversations with the initial applicant that a significant amount of engineering and architectural work has already been performed on the project. And so I would venture to say that there's pretty easily several tens of thousands of dollars already into the project and into the drawings. I would welcome anybody that may have any more specific knowledge about that in the room to, kind of stand up and advise if I'm missing the mark here wildly, but that's kind of my estimation because there has clearly been some engineering.
I'd like to object because his name is not on this application. He's not represented, his design is not represented in this application.
We can't have back and forth like that.
He had his chance for public comment and he's got just as much right to public comment as I do. and no more. I've got a lot more to say, and I have to sit here and be quiet. He doesn't contribute because he is not in the applicant. The property owner is the applicant.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I've
Am
invited
I-
an expert, a subject matter expert on the question that was asked
Yeah.
by the commission for the benefit of the commission.
We'll allow it.
Just to be simple then, your city manager's comment of tens of thousands of dollars is order of magnitude correct to develop a schematic level drawing that you're saying that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's my last question. Thank you.
I forgot one.
Sure.
There was a question from the public that was asked last time. I don't see him here. He must have come offline, but we asked it last time and we didn't have much information. I'm wondering, Mr. Gager, if the applicant has talked to you more specifically about, and I know this is outside of the annexation decision, but I also think it's important because the public has asked it repeatedly about funding. How many jobs are we talking about? Are these folks that already live here? Are they moving here? Any information? And if you don't have information, that's fine. I assume that the applicant watched the video and they would offer information. If they didn't, that's okay. I'm just curious if you know any more.
You know, we have been advised that approximately 60 employees would work at the facility or at least be based out of the facility. That is the information that we have. There is, obviously, we've got a subject matter expert in the room who may be able to comment more, but that's the extent of my knowledge.
Yeah, if he followed up and got more information since 2 weeks ago, that's great, but if not, I don't think he needs to come to the podium. It looks like he doesn't have more information. So that was my only other follow-up that I forgot. Thanks.
Okay. Deliberations. How would you like to see this? We kind of talked about that, the pros and cons. I'd be happy to have you facilitate that.
Well, you can facilitate it, Chair.
Well, you're good
But-
at this, but
But Commissioner Willich brought up, I think,
He
started
started
us
it, yeah.
with the conversation about county versus city.
mhm.
And it could be interesting to talk about that more. So I think
Exactly.
we've done I know this is before Commissioner Wilch's time, but we've done like spreadsheets before, just to work through all of our thoughts. And to have a record for the public of what we're thinking when we make decisions around contentious or
Right.
issues that can feel contentious to the community. I wonder if,
Yeah, if I guess, if we feel that need,
Yeah, I think we should talk it out.
yeah, I mean, I my pros, my cons and stuff like that.
are we okay with putting it on a list or something, just to
I've been grinding through this thing since it came out the first time.
He-
I got a lot of. pros.
well, Mr. Gager has done it before where he just sort of keeps track for us as
Yeah, I
we're
remember.
going through.
You guys did the,
You were here though,
yeah. I was
Yeah.
here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like the wellness center.
Yeah, wellness center, the parcel out there on the west end of town, and we've done this before.
I think it could be helpful just because it's a topic that the community's gonna wanna know why we're thinking what we're thinking. Or whatever decision we come to, though, I think it's helped bring transparency. But I'm just one commissioner. I don't know what the rest of you think.
Yeah, let's fire up and Excel, let's roll. Pivot tables, let's do it. I
Yeah.
don't have to fight it.
I don't have to run the spreadsheet, though.
Yeah, I guess it's what pros of annexation and cons of annexation, or pros of not annexing.
Right.
Cons of not annexing, which is not necessarily the same thing. A pro down of annexation is automatically is gonna be site review.
Well, we'll work on the pros first.
Is there any way you could,
I'm going to share it. I was just.
oh, I was gonna say, make it bigger?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like zoom in just a little bit. Thank you. My eyeballs aren't what they used to be, even with glasses.
I have one good eyeball for this.
It won't change.
Which
it
one?
when you
Is
have
that what
this
you-
one, they'll highlight
So
it.
just like go camera one, camera two.
Thank you, sir.
That's good. Camera one, camera two.
Just wish it's cataract would develop this eye, so I can get it done. Cause this, I had this done, I know.
Don't poke at it. That's not gonna be good for it.
Okay, I think we've got pretty good structure here. If you folks would like to proceed.
Willich was ready.
Yeah, sure. Site plan review, we've got gateway overlay requirements. There's a whole bunch of. Just start with those two. It's kind of huge, but then also. Well, I mean, I guess it's with all sorts of things, like we have the night sky ordinances, we've got a whole host of things that. They don't have out in county. So all of those come under our jurisdiction.
Thanks, you.
Ponds it is a weird island. It is contiguous with the interstate, which I get, but it is also on 3 sides. Minus a corner jump. Surrounded by unannexed property, so. Not huge on that, but we have other islands, so.
May have made up a word there, but. Contiguousness of the location.
Strategy. Indignitude.
It doesn't have a squiggly under it, though. You might be good.
Didn't get called out. yeah.
Excel doesn't do that.
Well, it's a good word then.
I'm sticking with it.
And we can just. We can come back to you. Want to yield to
Throw them out, I mean.
Mr.
We're,
Mr. Lyons there?
I would. Should I start? Can I start with whatever side I want?
Yeah.
I'm gonna start on cons. And I would say that there's. Community. Opposition. And I don't think that opposition has much, countervailing voice on the other side. Kind of in line with that community opposition is concerns about traffic impacts. And I think there was sufficient nuance in some other community comments to have a separate con be safety concerns, particularly as it pertains to accidents on that rail spur. And access to emergency services or egress in an emergency. I would also put well, I'm gonna talk this one out because I'm not totally sure where it falls, but I am amenable, or I understand the comments that pertain to whether or not this is in line with the growth policy. I think it can be argued that no annexation would be in line with the growth policy that is focused around infill development and as some commenters have described it, smart growth. I think expanding the footprint of the city could largely be considered incongruous with that. So I've talked myself into that being a con. That said, having oversight over the way that this developed, is in some ways in line with the growth policy. And when we're talking about infill and what can happen where, if we say no to everything, it happens in the county where there's no regulation. And while our jurisdiction is in the city, when we're thinking about planning and what happens kind of in around the nucleus of our city, we need to really think like regionally. So there were points made an analogy with the post office. If we talk about that analogy, the existing building for the USDA is actually further afield from downtown Livingston than what we're talking about here. And I find the concerns about traffic completely valid for that particular road. But trip generation affects more than just the link that's connected to the generation of that trip. It impacts the whole network. And when we're thinking about the traffic impacts on the entire network, that location is actually probably more efficient with its proximity to the highway and its proximity to downtown than generating trips further south on I-89.
Can we pause to reflect on your PhD-ness? Can I say it in other words and you can tell me if it's correct? So when you're thinking about traffic impacts alone, this is from a transportation day job person. Having it closer to the city and closer to the highway actually has fewer negative impacts traffic wise
I
than
haven't done the simulation, but like in
Right.
theory, if you
Okay.
think about like trip generation just has to do with like different land uses of different intensities create, in theory, X number of trips.
Mhm.
And so this use is gonna create X number of trips. Then what happens next is you assign those trips to the road network. And if you think about the assignment to the road network and where origins and destinations might be, this is actually kind of like a more efficient place
Okay.
with respect to the entire network
Thank you.
than further south on I-80.
The network being
The
this.
network being the entire road network within Livingston and beyond.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. That's helpful. I just want to make sure I'm totally following. Didn't mean to interrupt your
No,
flow.
no, it's good. I appreciate it. I'm sure I was.
I just don't want to assume I know. Thank
Oh,
you.
that's a great question. So what I'm saying there is that it's possible that this location for this existing use might be actually more efficient and more in line with the growth policy than where it is currently. So that's to say, I actually disagree with the analogy of the post office. Trying to remember where I am here. Oh, and actually, let's take this kind of hypothetical positioning of it a step further. There were some comments about, this is a loss to downtown. Imagine trying to propose something like this downtown. We have valid concerns about the transportation impacts in this location. Imagine the valid concerns about transportation impacts downtown. I'm not going to get into bid rent theory of like what land uses should happen where with respect to the center of a city. But if you want some fun reading, you can look into that and
I do.
that theory would not suggest that this type of use should be in downtown. I'm going to no specific pros and cons are coming to mind at the moment. I want to highlight that community opposition is real and it's pretty ubiquitous in terms of opposition versus proponents. The traffic impact concerns to me seem valid, particularly in the context of that area of town. Safety concerns seem valid. And I think that the most powerful argument in my assessment was made by Mr. Willich, which is if we deny this petition to annex, meaning someone else asked us, can I join your city? We didn't say, this is happening right here and we want this use, et cetera. Someone asked, can we be folded into the city? That affords us a level of review and control over what happens there that will not exist in the county if we deny the application. I'll yield for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Lyons. Commissioner Gale.
I'll go, and I think I'm gonna work off of a few things that Commissioner Lyons said. If we're gonna talk about the building that is supposedly proposed, I would agree with you that thinking about moving something like that downtown that includes as much parking and storage that they need, plowing down areas downtown to put big parking lots seems like a really wasted opportunity for businesses downtown. So I do disagree that something like this downtown would not be effective or helpful to the businesses downtown. Because it's not going to bring more businesses or gonna create money downtown. So just to play off of you a little bit and follow your thought there. A lot of the things that have already been said, I agree with. When it comes to cons, I've driven around out there. I've sat through plenty in the last several years of county commission meetings. Those county roads out there are a disaster. They're a mess. And to be quite frank, the idea that we would have to get involved in handling those roads at this point seems like a big con to me. That the city is now responsible for some of those roads out there and attempting to make it better. Because geez, those roads are really bad and a lot of them we're not gonna have any control over, so I don't know how we help make that better. And that's just gonna put us in the line of fire of the continuation of those bad roads. And the bad planning that has been done out there and the way that that area has grown. Because there's no zoning. You know, like, I know a school has been put out there on a road that's too narrow in that area. And other things that were just allowed to happen because there is no zoning. And for us to now get entangled in that is very worrisome to me. And I hate to be like, I hate to be sort of like, good luck, but that's where I feel we're sort of at, you know, like I could say, and I would say like, if we annex this, we will have a little bit of control. We'll have control over that building and those 2 blocks that are around that building, but nothing more. And we can't, as the city, make that better. That's not our jurisdiction. There's nothing we can do about it. So we could help make that building as good or as best as we could, and we could have landscaping and we could make sure that there were setbacks and, you know, all of that, and make sure that they're hooked into hooked into sewer and water so that you don't have to worry about a septic system out there. But I mean, that's what we can do to protect the county residents in that area if we were to annex it. But there's nothing that we can do to help what's going on out there, you know, and it sort of pulls us in, which is worrisome to me. You know, I heard someone say, you know, well, we would say no to Seuss Creek. Guess what? We don't get to say no to Seuss Creek. Nobody in this community gets to say no to a Seuss Creek development because we have decided to not do any zoning in the county. There's no guardrails. So I just want to bring that up as a reminder that it's open, and these folks we could annex this and this property owner could decide to do anything. As you said, Commissioner Willich, they could put a very tall building.
Yeah.
you know, sort of whatever they wanted, and there's no regulation. So for me, I'm sort of like, I'm very torn, because it would be nice to be able to do something to put some regulations around that one building that I sort of feel is gonna happen one way or the other. But I also just don't love the idea of the city getting dragged into the rest of what's happening out there, and I don't know how we as a city can do much to help. I mean, we could address some of those roads, we could keep looking at, you know, the roads that are ours and what we can do to help make those better. But if we can't get easements, and that's how the county grew in the first place, we're kind of, I won't say the word, but so I mean, I guess, I don't know if that helps with the pros or cons, but that's where I'm thinking, that's where my head is, looking at this, and so I'm conflicted on those two sides. And I did want to address one thing. There's something here that, Patricia, this was part of your comment, and I want to clarify that I have not made up my mind on how I'm gonna vote one way or the other. I never do till I get to a meeting and hear all the information. But there's comments in here that says apparently what the city commission led by, and it names all of us, this is what we want for our future. Just to be clear, I have not made up my mind. I've not told anybody how I'm gonna vote. I don't even know how I'm gonna vote sitting here right now. So I just wanna be clear that I don't think any of us have said how we're voting, and to be pretty clear, that I just want to make that clear in the public. I think I'm done for the moment.
My turn.
Please, ma'am.
I would pick up where you left off and say, I think like, it's important to remember what commissioners do versus what commissioners want is very different. Like what we do is we vote on things
In a
as they
binary
come
fashion.
in a binary
Yeah.
fashion. What we want, right? I'm guessing what we want is a fun place for toys, a fun place for skateboarding, right? Like what we want to have in Livingston isn't necessarily what's going to be built in Livingston. Like we don't get to pick and choose the projects that come before us, and we don't get to pick and choose who asks to be annexed. People have property rights, and then they decide how they want to develop, and they go to the appropriate body. That's what we get to pick and choose. We don't get to decide who we want to annex. Now, some commissions maybe do. We're not that commission that goes out and just annexes for fun. We don't do that. I would say, you know, first, I think I'm just gonna add some things. I agree with Commissioner Kale that a con is we're inheriting county problems. And I don't know how we want to say that. The county has failed to address some of these problems for a very long time. It's clear listening to the public. I cannot imagine how frustrating it is for you, and I'm sorry that your county commissioners haven't been listening. I hope you know that the city commissioners are. And I'm really sorry that you've been dealing with the same thing, maybe for decades. Yeah, it sounds like maybe forever since you've lived there, and I'm sorry. That's really
Every
frustrating.
decision they made has been the wrong one.
So
No decision is better than a wrong decision.
So I think, inheriting that is a definite big con. It's not dissimilar from decisions that this commission inherited from previous decades of decision makers. Let's bring up Green Acres as an example. We inherited a pretty significant challenge with decisions that were made decades before any of us were here on the commission. That's what I think about when I think about 5-acre tracts. It's like a huge development right next to town. A pro is that we do have city infrastructure that's new. We're not talking about old pipes that are 100 years old, so that's a plus. It's good for that part of town and people that want to annex in. Good for current taxpayers too in the city of Livingston. I would say one thing that I've heard consistently from folks in town here in Livingston, particularly up on the north side. There's some folks that live right there on the edge of the city-county line, and their neighbors right across the street are in the county, and there's no regulations with what they can do on their land. So they're storing things like black water tanks, right? I mean, talk about a view of the mountains, right? You're looking out at these tanks that are stacked. I don't know, I haven't been up there lately, how many tanks high
They're
they
still
are.
there.
Right out of their front door. It's the first thing they see in the morning, every day. So I think we have some ability when it's city to think about adjacent land use compatibility. That's something that we can do if it's in the city. We don't have any say what the county does. None of you do, right? So city zoning, I would say like land use compatibility when we make those decisions. I would say I don't know where to put this. I guess I would say, like, I've heard people in the 5-acre tracts talk about their neighbors building things incredibly large that are permanent and forever in their view, and they don't have any say over what their neighbors build, right? So that's been a problem, even from folks here in the room talking to me about that. So I don't know, I guess like the county, it takes away the opportunity. There's no opportunity for neighbors to come to consensus with the local electeds. The city, we provide a forum for neighbors to have conversations about property development. And I've seen that happen where neighbors really do come together and talk about it, or even developers with neighborhoods. So I would say that's something that our process allows. This is the one where I really don't know where to put it, is I've gone to some county meetings with the folks who live in the county about It's My Land. We've talked about annexation and how the city is not hungry to annex. One thing that I find challenging is these different pockets of county do have opportunities to do citizen initiated zoning where they can come to consensus together, right? And work with their county officials to determine the future of their own neighborhoods, right? You can do that on your own. You don't need to wait for electeds to do it. That hasn't happened, right? This is 2-3 years ago that I was talking to county folks. I don't think there's been any traction that I know of. So as a city official, I don't have any say over what happens in the county, and I'm unable to help those county residents because it's not in our jurisdiction. So I'm thinking one pro is if the properties are in the city, then we can actually help meet that need when we don't have the ability to help our neighbors right now. So I would say the city commission could be in a role to help our more rural community members if it was annexed. Right now, we have no tools to help you, including with road maintenance. I would say one pro of annexation also is we clearly need to have more conversations with the county about road conditions, particularly where city and county meet. I think every time we annex, it gives the commission the ability to set a priority for Mr. Gager, who then is able to direct his staff to carry out the will of the commission. So if the commission finds that this is a priority where we want to work more with the county about helping these folks right adjacent to town, this provides us an avenue to be able to do that. Otherwise, like to your point, the roads are like a hot mess out in the county and there's nothing we can do to help. And they're operating in the red, right? Like the county's budget is much worse than ours, even though they have a much larger budget than us. So it must be very frustrating to be a county resident. The other thing I was thinking was, I wonder if that's most everything. I mean, I wish we could like weight some of these things because I think the traffic impact concerns is such a huge concern for the people that live there, and I don't blame them. It's been a mess ever since I've lived in Livingston for the folks on the 5-acre tracts. And also, that's again, not the city, so like, if it's in the city, we actually have a process. We have a process for design standards, we have a process that the staff go through for site plan review, that's not, it's regulated by the city commission, it's not just the state. So we have a lot more control over properties. If that makes sense, like we have like, what am I trying to say? We have
Standards, like, well,
we have like more, instead of like everything being like a giant hatchet that just whacks through, we have the ability to do like more precise, what's the word? Like more, can you help me out here if I'm thinking?
We can help applicants and property owners refine projects, improve projects to meet standards.
Right, and there's, yes, and more refining even like just with conversations that happen outside of the commission between developers and staff. Because we have forced staff to do that here in the city. So I guess I would put like maybe more refinement about community concerns. It really is like what Commissioner Welch was saying, like anything could go there in the county. Like, is it gonna be a gravel pit right next to your neighborhood? Is it gonna be, I don't know, like, is it gonna be a slaughterhouse, you said? I mean,
could be.
I mean, if it's not zoned, I mean, I could tell you in the city, we can actually have those conversations before it's developed, so. I can't think of anything else right now. Oh, there was one. I can't think of something else. I was thinking about the growth policy. Thank you for always giving me a second. The growth policy, to Commissioner Lyons' point, I think it does follow the growth policy in the sense that septic tanks in town are not fantastic, and we have lots of evidence for it contaminating wells. There's people on wells out in that part of town. It's probably high density of wells and septic tanks, I'm guessing, in the 5-acre tracts. Also not that far from where the flooding was. That water came across the highway. That water table is very high out there, which means I don't know how you feel about your septic tank being close to the well when the water table is high. Me, not a fan. So I think this is something the commission has repeatedly addressed, is wanting to protect our water. And septic tanks do not do that. Okay. I think that's it for now. Your turn.
yeah, well, yeah, you really covered everything. I don't- This is- So, well, just as an aside, that post office thing, that was an interesting, scenario, but, one of my clients at the time that you lived in town, they were from Mississippi, and, this going back, the way back machine, but, she was good friends with Trent Lott, Senator Mississippi, or North, I believe, and, I mean, Louisiana, and, he had a lot to say on keeping the post office here and stuff like that. So just a fun little story for history. Come down to, be careful what you wish for. You know, I hate using that. And I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other out here, and I really understand and hear the Carter's concern and everybody else's and stuff like that. But I think every commissioner here has really done a thorough job of really thinking this through. About, the pros and cons. Being in the city, you will, even as a county resident, have some say in input on what goes in there, during the site review and all that, so it's not easy, not an easy decision, and yeah, and this kind of development that would not be good for downtown, especially with, storage needs that they look for and stuff like that. And I'm sure they probably have looked at what's available in downtown and, land wise and everything else. So, I mean, if I was, to develop something like that, yeah, I would look there too, so. But it's not compatible as well, so. You guys all made compelling arguments for and against, and round two.
I may.
I'm going back to you now.
Yeah.
Round two.
I know what an engine fill station is, and I know what a hose drying rack is, and got a pretty good idea of what they think they
Yeah.
want to build out there. Yeah, if you really want to hear some howling about fire departments being next to each other, having 3 groups of fire trucks located within a couple of 100 yards or of each other would be a real pain. That said, I guess one of the pros, I guess I would think about this is that it is an office building, so they will have office hours. So there won't be people there at night, technically. There may be somebody responding to a fire out there in the woods somewhere, but nobody's gonna be there at night, so it should be quiet. And when I think about the surrounding neighborhood, okay, we've got a mostly open field right next to the interstate. Yeah, it's pretty okay. I don't think I'd like to have 60 housing units right next to the interstate. If they're talking about 60 employees, let's make that 60 apartments. That's right next to the interstate like that. I think that's a plan or a recipe for some pissed off people eventually living next to the interstate. I can't imagine the interstate over in Belgrade right off of Jackrabbit there. Okay. There's what I think Patricia has said a few times, there's what, 3.5 million cars that drive by there every day. So that affects people's, well-being. But an office building, people show up at 8 in the morning, leave at 5 in the afternoon, or whatever their hours are. When I think about that and 3 million cars driving by, I feel a little better about it. So maybe a pro would be the proposed land use is it's consistent with being next to an interstate, a very high traffic road. And I'm digging around for some cons I have some in my head, but I'm trying to parse through them so I can make them clear as opposed to just a mess. I mean, obviously as Commissioner Lyons said, the community impact is really the one that's sticking out for me right now.
For me,
And I am also concerned about some of the issues that the county set up for us, like the entire wine glass having to, if they have a wildfire event up there, they're gonna have a difficult time funneling everybody through there. That's not us, that's the county, they set that up, not us. But perhaps the county needs to have some hard conversations with landowners to get a second access out there.
Well, they do. They do have second access, and that's supposed to be the primary. It's through the wine glass.
On the 330? I thought there was another one off, what is it, Willow or something that goes off to 330? A whole second.
Oh, I don't know, but yeah. By Wine Glass Estates Road or whatever that is, it goes through the Brockway Ranch.
Oh.
You access up through there. And
Yeah, I
that's,
forget about
the
that.
residents really wanted, construction traffic to go that way. If
Right,
I'm not mistaken, the trucks and stuff like that when they're building it. So
right.
anyway, but
Yeah,
I'm just throwing
underscore
that out
that-
there that there is other egress to the wine glass.
Yeah,
It's been a long time since I've been up that way, so can't remember.
yeah, I haven't been
You
up
know,
that way in years.
up that
Before I
route.
was there Years ago.
But I do, Meals on Wheels in the area, every couple of months, so.
Mhm.
Back in the trailers off of Billman.
Yeah,
And
I remember that area. Yeah, I just was gonna underscore Commissioner Lyons, community opposition is pretty strong on this one.
Right,
I yield. Thank you.
thank you.
Hey, to Commissioner Kale's point earlier, I don't think any of us really feel like there's a good option in front of us.
I agree.
And that's the rub of being a decision maker is that you so rarely get to make decisions that you feel 100% positive about. I feel like there's one option that's a little less bad. And I will actually add a pro. We've talked about traffic, and again, I think that those are valid concerns. And this occurred to me a few meetings ago, and I never had the chance to mention it. My understanding of how this will contribute to traffic flows on that street is counter to the existing congestion. So what I mean by that is that, you know, I would expect that the majority of the traffic flowing on Loves is flowing eastbound in the morning and westbound in the evening, as folks leave their homes up on the hill to go to work in the morning and come home in the evening. That's the opposite flow that would be generated by one of the potential developments here. You know, this is very theoretical, and again, we're not deciding upon the development, we're deciding upon annexation. But the development that was presented would likely have traffic generation that flows kind of counter to existing congestion. And that's not to say it wouldn't contribute in any way to congestion, because it certainly would. But it would not contribute in a way that would be adding to existing congestion problems. If we were to talk of, if this were to be a residential development, that would be adding to existing flows, and potentially have a greater impact on congestion. But if it's an employment land use, it's likely to have the opposite flow pattern that I would expect exists on that road. Yeah, none of us are excited about the vote in front of us, and I take seriously all the concerns that we've heard. And I think that there's two bad options, and one of them is a little bit less bad. Oh, yep.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You know, looking at that property and looking at the highway that is behind it, I agree with Commissioner Willich that an office building or some sort of commercial building would be better than housing right there abutting the highway. You know, I've heard concerns from folks about, you know, well, there's cows, and you know, the people are raising cows next door to this property. I think people are raising horses and cows next to the current USDA building as well. So it's going in actually a more commercial neighborhood than it currently is in. It looked like from the future land use map that property was actually identified for medium density residential. Is that what I was seeing in that? I had it opened at one point and then flipped around and lost it. And we don't, like, medium density residential is not. No, it's right here. Yeah, see, look at that right there. Oh, actually, high density residential. Is that what it's marked at? That's what it looks
I
like.
think that's what it is. high
Yeah.
density.
Or that with like a future land use map, high density residential. So we don't, like, that's not exactly a zoning district in which we have on the books currently, right?
High density residential?
Yeah, well,
What's
what
R3?
would be R3?
Yeah.
What's allowed in R3? I don't have the map right in front of me. Like, are office buildings allowed in R3?
Well, we can go to the use table. But no, I do believe in R3, we are still limited to those, generally speaking, affluent buildings off the
Just
top of my head. but
residential.
that's-
Okay.
Right. It'd be mixed use. I think that.
I know there's a taller height limit in R3 relative to. R1.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's- that's good. And so. R3 is the, well, I'll share for the folks at home. Just
Mhm.
a quick second. So R3 is the fourth column over here. The second whitish one. You can see all the residential uses are allowed. And as we work down, certainly churches, schools are allowed. Trade schools not allowed, though public-private parochial schools are.
For clinics, medical clinics,
Yeah,
hospital
hospitals.
institutions. Veteran, no, not veteran.
We're not working on animals in that district. no
Childcare.
laundromats, No hotels, motels, travel
Those
parks.
businesses and professional offices.
That would be with a special exception.
A special.
So, I mean,
Sorry.
it's pushing into that, right? It's what we actually have in future land use map. So, so just saying that and looking at that, that makes me, like, we're close to that thought process of when these maps were created. I still have, I mean, I agree with Commissioner Lyons that we're gonna have to make the best of a not exciting decision. And again, just as a reminder, this would not be a decision that this commission brought upon itself to make this decision. So we would not be asking to annex this for any reason. So I don't know that I have much more. Chair Schwartz.
Commissioner notes.
One thing we forgot to put on our list was, fire suppression. That you brought up, and I do think that our Fire Chief Chabalowski is extremely, what's the word? Hyper vigilant when it comes to risks to the community. I think his background is like pretty remarkable, and he's thinking through all these things and how to keep our community safe. As someone who's been in the profession, serving the public, I think for his whole career.
Yeah.
In law enforcement and fire. I am remembering after sitting up here for over 6 years of all the times county residents have come up. And I am utterly confused about the resistance to citizen initiated zoning, because it's quite clear that you know what you want. From my perspective, it's quite clear that there's unity in these different neighborhoods in the county. In defining what you don't want, you are defining what you also want. And you have the ability to control this yourself without us. You can do citizen initiated zoning, you can do citizen initiated zoning with your neighbors. That is something that's possible in the state of Montana. The state still allows it for now. Again, it's not our jurisdiction, but you do have opportunities to protect yourself, your property rights, your property values, and work with your neighbors to do so. When you come in groups and you have similar wants, things that you want or don't want for your community, that people might not like the Z word, but that is the tool that you can use to help get what you need. And there are people in this county that, are experts on this, that can answer those questions. We are not that tool to do that for county residents. So I think that's one thing that's very hard, is knowing that, it's hard to see that there's because I appreciate, to Linda's point, there's people that have lived here for a long time and we can't forget about those people as new people are coming in. And one way to do that, one way to protect what you love is to get together with your neighbors and protect it rather than having to respond to things that happen at the commission. And this is stuff you can do with your county commissioners too. They could help you. If this is something that you want, it's their jurisdiction, right? There's many avenues to citizen initiated zoning, which is really just a way to protect your land. Also, having those conversations with your neighbors to find out like what the future of their property is. Because if your neighbor wants to be annexed and you don't, like, that's a good place for that conversation to start is with each other, and like learning from each other, because that's, to Linda's point again, like, y'all know what's best for your neighborhoods that have lived here. You could work together to do that for yourselves, like, because that's not something we can put on county residents or do for county residents as city commissioners. But I understand that it's been made into like a bad word, or there's a lot of misinformation out there about what it is and what it isn't. And fear is a strong motivator to resist things. That's all very real to me. And I'm sorry that that's what's happening in our community. I'm also sorry that we have these big developments right adjacent to town, and like, we knew this day would come, and as this commission, we keep seeing it over and over and over, these difficult conversations. It's really hard. To Commissioner Lyons' point, it's like being between a rock and a hard place when, if we could, to a point of a public comment, what do we want, right? Like, what do the commissioners want as individual people? Like, if we could do what we wanted, I wish, that somebody would have had a crystal ball back then and could have like thought about the streets and how that would impact these neighborhoods, or thought about the future developments and how they would impact the current developments out in the county, being so close to the city. That's what I wish, if, we could be making wishes real. I wish that could have happened back then. They could have forecasted a little bit, but that's not where we are. I will say throughout this process, I'm a little frustrated by the errors that have come up from the applicant. 3 times is a lot. This has been a very patient commission to see this over and over. This has been a very patient community to come over and over to meetings on a weeknight. My hope is that in future conversations with city staff that they'll be more thoughtful maybe about staff and community time and how much this community tracks things, and make sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted before they show up for meetings. Respectfully. That's been frustrating for me. So it really does put us like between 2 not fantastic alternatives. And for that, I'm sorry to the public. We don't get to choose what's on. We don't get to choose who has to be annexed. I yield.
I have nothing more to add.
I think I have one last thing.
Please go.
It's neither a pro nor con, but it is an observation that the property owner who has rights has requested us to annex his parcel, their parcel. Full stop.
Right. Thank you. Commissioner, any other thoughts, Tori? No, Commissioner Kale.
Anything else?
Commissioner Notes.
I think we're probably as tired as the public is. Like, this is, I don't want to say it's as hard for us because we don't live in your neighborhood, but it's also hard for us.
Yeah, it's difficult. I don't feel good one way or the other about it, quite frankly, but at that point, are we ready for a vote?
Yeah, I guess there's one thing I would say, because I do think it's important to put this on the record. I think if you're objectively evaluating the city of Livingston team has never been more high functioning than it is now. So if you have questions, you have concerns, we're not perfect, we're just people doing the best we can, all of us, commissioners, staff included, but it's never been more high functioning, in my opinion, than it is today. So I don't know what's happened in the past, but I know you'll get answers, even if it's not always what you want to hear, you're gonna have responsiveness from the city more today than you ever have. That I feel confident with whatever happens.
I agree. That sentiment. Okay, do I, need a motion?
Nobody yet, sir.
Nobody's motion. Do I have a motion on resolution 5159?
I move to approve resolution 5159 and authorize the chair to sign.
Motion by Willich. Do I have a second? I'll second. I'll be another whipping post. That. Roll call, please.
Chair Schwartz,
Or
Vice Chair Newts,
Or
Commissioner Kale,
Four.
Commissioner Lyons, or Commissioner Wilch.
Or
motion carries. That concludes this portion of the meeting. Our next. Wait.
Nope.
No, not gonna do that, okay.
Okay.
We will not go into closed session, so. City manager comments.
Thank you, commissioners. Appreciate your time and deliberation as always this evening, and look forward to meeting again in 3 weeks. We are on a 5 Tuesday month here, so we'll be back in early May, 3 weeks from today. Thank you.
Commissioner Woolidge,
what am I gonna do without seeing you guys once every other week?
find something.
Gonna screw up my whole schedule. Long deliberation tonight about touchy subjects, and I appreciate all of our candidness and be able to handle this in a professional and calm manner. Stay warm. Hope you got your windows still shut up for the winter because it's gonna be cold tomorrow. With that, I yield. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank my fellow commissioners. I know because I experience it that sometimes these decisions just feel rotten one way or another. And it's funny, I actually I don't think it's all that often though that we unanimously vote one way, and still, I'm pretty sure all of us at the table feel as rotten as we do about unanimously voting one way. And I just want to recognize like the toll, like the challenge and the toll that takes on every one of us. And I just understand and I appreciate the rigor that we all bring to the discussion, because while I don't think it makes me feel much better about the decision, I think it helps to demonstrate to the public that these decisions aren't made without careful consideration. And I also understand that careful consideration is cold comfort when things don't go the way that you think they should. And because I've been there. But anyway, we're all here at 9:30 at night making decisions that make us feel weird. And I appreciate everybody's dedication and commitment to our community.
Linda, I wanted to address you just from your public comment at the beginning of the meeting. As a reminder, yes, we heard you, about
I can see.
the water, but also
Oh,
about
other
the water, and I think that we had talked last week that we asked Mr. Gager to include that in the budgeting process and so we could look at it during that. So it's gonna be a little bit probably
Okay.
before you see us discuss it,
That's
but
the budgeting
it's
process is
in-
a while.
it's in the plan. So just
Thank you.
to be clear, so that I want you to know that we heard you. Yeah, this is a really hard one tonight, and I take solace in knowing that we can put some rules and regulations around what's gonna be built on that property. And I appreciate that. I think we've also forced ourselves to step into the road out there, and means that we need to do the best that we possibly can for the roads that we now have control over. So, and I know the team will take that into consideration and be thoughtful about what that looks like. But yeah, this was a tough one. Thank you all for coming and expressing your comments and concerns, and those who came at the beginning of the meeting to discuss other things. So, thank you. I yield.
Linda, I made a motion and somebody seconded it for the budget to Commissioner Kale's point, which means it has to go in the agenda. That's usually late spring into early summer. And so probably what will happen is Mr. Gager will probably bring us different ideas, and he'll have time to do evaluations with staff to figure out what makes, what he would propose to us for billing. So it's like a long process, and then billing usually happens. Voting on billing usually happens after votes on the budget, so stay tuned. You can reach out to Mr. Gager's office and he'll direct you to the appropriate staff people. Thank you for that. I really wish that the folks that come and I don't know if this happens or not, the county folks, what they say is important and it matters. And I wish they would take these things also to their county commissioners if they haven't. There's so much rhetoric around the government taking away things with zoning, but that's one way to view zoning, but it's not the whole story. There's ways that are zoning where it's the people controlling things that they want, and it's not the government making the decisions.
Right.
So and there's so many common themes that come from these different camp pockets of the county that come forward. It's obvious that there's some real unity in these neighborhoods, and they have a lot of control over their own neighborhoods if they choose to exert that control that we cannot do as the city.
That's a
So
great point. I have no idea.
so I think it would be wonderful if they would have deeper conversations with their county representatives and staff about what the possibilities are. I want to thank Mr. Gager's service to the community throughout this. I think he was unfairly targeted, as was staff, over a request from a landowner. So thanks for your patience and calm demeanor through all of this. And I really meant what I said, that I think that folks coming into the city can expect a level of service they haven't received before, and a responsiveness from, there's always been responsive city staff, but I think as a whole, it's probably leveled up as a whole. There's always been city staff that's been responsive, but as a whole team, I think that they've probably leveled up in the more recent past. So I'm hopeful that it will be a good experience for these neighbors. If they have questions, they should reach out to the city offices. I yield.
Thank you, commissioners. What a great deliberative body. I mean, I don't know that we could have done any better or any more. It was thoughtful and not an easy decision at all. Sorry about the threats that, posed to staff and Mr. Gager. And, but I, with what we've done, we're gonna make it better out there than it currently is. Because we're gonna have to own a part of these roads now, and we will make it better. That's just the fact of the matter.
Mhm.
And, yeah, I echo exactly what Melissa says, you know, you don't have to wait for government to do something, take the initiative. And, if you want protections for like the 5-acre tracts, get together and, lots of different things you can do. I'll address Linda also on the billing. That's something Mr. Gager and I, talked about quite a while back as well. Because, I was approached, well, I got my billing, whoa, you know, so there, I think there's some easy solutions to that, to address that. Other than that, late hour, I have a motion for adjournment. So move. Second,
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is adjourned at 9:30 on the dot. On.